Welcome to the Crime for Sleep channel. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Story 1. The apartment complex had been quiet for years. The landlord swore that Unit 312 had remained vacant since the last tenant vanished. But when the police investigated a noise complaint, they found food still warm on the stove, a bed recently slept in, and a message scrawled across the wall: "I never left." I remember the first time I walked into Unit 312. The air hung still and heavy, tinged with the lingering scent of someone's dinner, a simple pasta dish, judging by the pot on the stove. Steam still rose from it in lazy, curling wisps. The fork rested beside an empty plate, as if whoever had been eating had simply stepped away for a moment. But according to the building manager, Mr. Grayson, no one should have been there at all. "I swear on my mother's grave, detective," he had said, keys jingling nervously in his weathered hands as we stood in the hallway. "Unit 312 has been empty since Jessica Chen disappeared 3 years ago. We never found another tenant who wanted to stay more than a few weeks. Eventually, I just stopped trying to rent it." The complaint had come in at 10:17 p.m. A resident on the floor below had reported hearing footsteps, the scrape of chairs against the floor, and what sounded like someone humming a melody. Nothing alarming in itself, except that Unit 312 was supposedly vacant. I moved deeper into the apartment, my footsteps echoing slightly on the hardwood floors. The living room was sparse, a single armchair facing the window, a stack of books on the floor beside it. I knelt down to examine them, poetry collections with several pages marked by thin strips of paper. When I opened one, I found annotations in the margins, written in a delicate, slanting handwriting. The ink was still fresh, barely dry to the touch. The bedroom told a different story. The sheets on the bed were rumpled, pulled back as if someone had just risen. A depression remained in the pillow, and when I placed my hand there, I could still feel a whisper of warmth. On the nightstand sat a glass of water, half empty, with a perfect crescent of lipstick on the rim. "When was the last time you were in this apartment, Mr. Grayson?" I called out. He lingered in the doorway, reluctant to enter. "Last week," he answered, his voice wavering slightly. "I do monthly inspections of all vacant units. There was nothing here then. No food, no bed linens, nothing." I nodded slowly, my gaze drawn to the bathroom door, which stood slightly ajar. A thin line of steam escaped through the crack. The case of Jessica Chen had gone cold years ago. 27 years old, a graduate student in literature, she had simply stopped existing one day. No bank withdrawals, no phone calls, no social media activity. Her family had reported her missing after 2 weeks of silence. When the police investigated her apartment, this apartment had been found in perfect order, as if she had stepped out for a coffee and intended to return. But she never did. "What do you know about Jessica Chen?" I asked, my voice deliberately measured and calm as I made notes in my small leather-bound notebook. The pen made a soft, scratching sound against the paper. Mr. Grayson shifted his weight, the floorboards creaking beneath him. "Quiet girl, paid her rent on time, always alone. Some of the other tenants said they would hear her reciting poetry aloud at night." I moved toward the bathroom, pushing the door open with my fingertips. The mirror was fogged, and droplets of water still clung to the shower tiles. A damp towel hung over the edge of the tub, and there, on the steamed mirror, a finger had traced words that were now slowly fading. "Look behind the bookcase." The living room bookcase was small, pressed against the wall beside the window. With Mr. Grayson's help, we pulled it away from the wall. Behind it, someone had cut into the drywall, creating a small cavity. Inside was a leather-bound journal. Back at the station, seated at my desk under the dim glow of my lamp, I opened Jessica's journal. The pages were filled with the same slanting handwriting I had seen in the poetry books. The entries began normally enough, musings about her studies, complaints about noisy neighbors, notes about her research. But about halfway through, the tone changed. "I can hear someone mimicking my movements," one entry read. "When I walk across the floor, there's an echo not from below, but from somewhere inside these walls. When I turn off my lamp at night, I sometimes see a light behind the vents. Someone is watching me." The entries grew increasingly paranoid, or so I thought, until I reached one dated just days before her disappearance. I found it today. Behind the bathroom mirror, there's a crawl space that connects to the maintenance areas. Someone has been living in the walls. I found their nest, blankets, food wrappers, and dozens of pages of my poetry stolen from my desk. They've been here all along, watching me, living parallel to me. The final entry was short. "I'm going to confront them tonight. I need to know who's been living alongside me all this time." For 3 weeks, we monitored Unit 312. We installed cameras, motion sensors, heat detectors, nothing. And yet every few days, small things would change. A book would move from the shelf to the table. The chair would face a different direction. Once we found a fresh cup of tea, still warm, sitting on the kitchen counter. The building plans revealed what Jessica had discovered: a network of maintenance corridors and crawl spaces running between and behind the units, originally designed for pipe access but large enough for a person to navigate. Most had been sealed off during renovations years ago, but a few entrances remained, hidden behind fixtures or false walls. It was Officer Martinez who made the breakthrough. While reviewing the building's utility records, she noticed something odd. Unit 312's electricity usage had never dropped to zero, even when supposedly vacant. It maintained a low but consistent level of power consumption year-round. "Someone's been tapping into the electrical system," she concluded, "using just enough power to remain undetected." We decided to set a trap. We announced a week-long building inspection that would include all vacant units, then removed our surveillance equipment. On the final night, I waited alone in the darkened apartment next door, monitoring thermal imaging equipment focused on the walls between units. At 2:17 a.m., the readings changed. Something warm was moving through the walls, heading toward Unit 312. I waited, barely breathing, as the heat signature paused at what we had identified as an access point in the bathroom. When I entered Unit 312 with my team, we found a man sitting calmly in the armchair by the window. He was thin, almost gaunt, with pale skin that suggested years without sunlight. He didn't resist when we arrested him. He simply smiled, his eyes never leaving the bathroom door. His name was Peter Wilkins. He had been the building's maintenance man 5 years earlier before being fired for inappropriate behavior toward female tenants. But he had never actually left. Using his knowledge of the building's structure, he had created a living space within the walls and crawl spaces, surviving on stolen food and electricity, watching the tenants through vents and small holes drilled through walls. "Jessica and I had a connection," he told us during interrogation, his voice soft and reasonable. "She would read her poetry aloud and I would listen. Sometimes, when she was asleep, I would come into her apartment and read her journals. I just wanted to know her better." The question everyone wanted answered: what happened to Jessica Chen? Peter's calm demeanor never changed as he explained. "She found me one night. She'd set a trap, pretended to leave, then waited in the darkness. When I came through the bathroom access, she was there. She wasn't afraid, just disappointed. Said she'd been imagining someone different, someone worthy of her words. He paused, then a slight tremor passing through his hands. I just wanted her to understand. I tried to explain how perfect our arrangement was, how I'd been her most devoted audience. She said she was going to call the police. I couldn't let that happen. This was my home too. The search of the maintenance spaces revealed a grim answer to Jessica's disappearance. Behind a false wall in the basement, wrapped carefully in plastic, we found her remains, surrounded by pages of her poetry, preserved like sacred texts. Yet somehow that wasn't the most disturbing discovery. In the 3 years since Jessica's death, other tenants had briefly occupied Unit 312. In each case, Peter had continued his voyeuristic routine, watching them through the walls. When they noticed strange occurrences, missing food, moved objects, the feeling of being watched, they inevitably left, usually within weeks. But he had done more than just watch. From Jessica's clothes, he had taken fabric to create curtains for his hidden spaces. He used her shampoo sparingly to make it last. He would read her books, sleep in her bed when the apartment was empty, cook using her recipes. I kept her alive, he insisted. Someone needed to remember her exactly as she was. After we arrested Peter, Unit 312 was sealed off as a crime scene. Weeks of forensic work followed, documenting every hidden access point, every modification he had made to the walls and vents. When the work was finally complete, the building owner decided to completely renovate the unit, tearing down walls and replacing everything. I visited one last time before the demolition began. Standing in the empty space that had once been Jessica's living room, I felt a peculiar weight in the air. Though the physical remnants of both Jessica and her killer had been removed, something lingering remained, something that couldn't be extracted with blood samples or fingerprint dust. As I turned to leave, my phone rang. It was Officer Martinez. "You need to see this," she said, her voice tight. "We were processing the last of Peter's possessions from his space in the walls. There's a journal. His entries continue for weeks after we arrested him." "That's impossible," I said. "That's not all," she continued. "The building manager just called. Someone reported noises from Unit 312 last night, footsteps and someone reciting poetry." I looked back at the empty apartment, at the message still visible on the wall despite attempts to clean it. I never left. Some stories don't end when we close the case file. Some rooms are never truly empty. I still drive past that apartment building sometimes late at night. Unit 312 has new tenants now. From the street I can see their lights on, shadows moving behind the curtains. I wonder if they hear footsteps when they're trying to sleep. I wonder if they ever feel like they're being watched. I wonder if they've noticed yet that they're never really alone. Story 2. I remember the first time I noticed the change in the painting. It was a Tuesday morning in late October, the kind where mist clings to the windows and everything feels slightly muted. The portrait had hung in my bedroom for nearly 3 months since grandmother's passing, an inheritance I'd treasured more than the jewelry or antique furniture that my cousins had eagerly claimed. The painting was a landscape, a sprawling meadow that gave way to distant rolling hills, bathed in the warm glow of a setting sun. I'd always found it soothing, the way the brushstrokes seemed to capture not just the scene but the feeling of peaceful solitude. That morning, as I sipped my coffee in the half-light of dawn, my eyes drifted to it as they always did. But something was different. In the far background, near the tree line where the artist had painted shadows gathering, was a small, dark silhouette that I couldn't recall seeing before. I approached the painting slowly, coffee cup warming my palms, and peered closer. The figure was faint, almost like a smudge, but unmistakably human-shaped. I told myself it was a trick of the light, or perhaps I simply hadn't noticed this detail before. The next morning, the figure was clearer. I could make out the shape of shoulders, the suggestion of a stance. It was still small, still distant in the painted landscape, but undeniably more defined. I ran my fingertips over the canvas, expecting to feel some raised texture where new paint might have been applied, but the surface was unchanged, smooth, and slightly dusty with age. By the third day, I could see that it was a man. This realization sent a chill through me that no amount of coffee could dispel. I called my sister, Catherine, who had helped me settle grandmother's estate. "Was there ever anyone else in the painting?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. The meadow landscape that used to hang in her reading room. "Just hills and trees," Catherine replied, her voice tinny through the speaker. "Why?" I didn't tell her. Something held me back, perhaps the certainty that she wouldn't believe me, or worse, that she would suggest I was imagining things in my grief. Instead, I began to document the changes. Each morning, I would photograph the painting in the same light, from the same angle. The progression was undeniable. The figure grew more distinct with each passing day, as if walking slowly from the background toward the foreground of the painting. By the end of the week, I could see his face. It was a man in his 50s, perhaps, with deep-set eyes and a grim set to his mouth. His clothes were dark, nondescript, the kind that wouldn't draw attention, but his eyes, they seemed to look directly at the viewer, directly at me. I stopped sleeping in that room. During the day, when sunlight filled the apartment and the normal sounds of life outside my windows grounded me in reality, I would research the painting. Grandmother had told me once that it was the work of a local artist who had died young, but I couldn't recall the name. I searched through her papers, through old receipts and letters, anything that might offer an explanation. In a folder marked Acquisitions, I found it, a yellowed receipt for the painting, dated May 15, 1973. The artist's name was Daniel Whitaker. A quick internet search revealed little, just a few mentions in local art show listings from the early 1970s. No major exhibitions, no significant sales, a footnote in the art world. But there was one article from a small-town newspaper archived online that caught my attention. Daniel Whitaker had disappeared in 1973, shortly after selling several of his works at a gallery showing. No body was ever found. The case had gone cold almost immediately. The timing was impossible to ignore. I contacted the local historical society where grandmother had lived. They directed me to a retired detective who had worked on unresolved cases in the county archives, Elliot Mercer, now in his 70s but still sharp-minded and curious. We met at a quiet coffee shop downtown. I brought my laptop with the chronological photos of the painting's transformation. Mercer studied them in silence, the steam from his black coffee creating a haze between us. His weathered hands, spotted with age, moved deliberately through the digital images. "I remember this case," he said finally, his voice low and gravelly. "Whitaker, he was an odd one, reclusive, lived in that old cabin up by Lake Hollow. Talented, though. His landscapes had something that drew you in." I waited, sensing there was more. "There was a suspect," Mercer continued, his eyes not meeting mine. "Another artist, a contemporary of Whitaker's, fellow named Lawrence Gaines. They had exhibited together a few times. Rumor was Gaines was jealous of Whitaker's talent." He paused, taking a slow sip of his coffee. "But we never had enough evidence to make an arrest." "Is Gaines still alive?" I asked, feeling the weight of possibility. Mercer nodded slowly. Last I heard, lives in a care facility now. Alzheimer's, I believe. The care facility was a 40-minute drive away. The November afternoon was already fading to dusk when I arrived, the sky heavy with the promise of rain. The building was modern and clean, with the faint antiseptic smell that seems universal to all such places. Lawrence Gaines sat in a common area, staring out a window at the gathering darkness. He was thin, diminished by age and illness, his artist's hands now trembling slightly where they rested on the arms of his chair. The nurse had warned me that his lucidity came and went. Today might be a good day, or it might not. There was no way to know. "Mr. Gaines," I said softly, sitting in the chair opposite him. "My name is Emily. I'd like to ask you about a painting." His eyes, clouded by cataracts but still intensely blue, shifted to my face. For a long moment he said nothing, and I thought perhaps this was not a good day after all. Then he spoke, his voice surprisingly clear. "Which painting?" I showed him a photograph on my phone, the original image of the landscape before the figure had appeared. Recognition flickered across his face. "Daniel's Meadow," he murmured, "at sunset." "Did you know him well, Daniel Whitaker?" Gaines' gaze drifted back to the window. He was better than me. Everyone knew it. I knew it. His fingers tapped a restless rhythm on the chair. He could capture light in a way that wasn't natural. I leaned forward slightly. "What happened to him, Mr. Gaines?" A smile touched his lips, but there was no warmth in it. He put himself into his work. That's what a true artist does, you know, puts himself into his work. A chill ran through me as I recalled the figure in the painting, growing clearer each day. "What do you mean by that?" But Gaines' eyes had gone distant again, his moment of clarity passing like a cloud moving from the sun. The nurse touched my shoulder gently, indicating that it was time to leave. That night I returned to my apartment to find water dripping from the ceiling in my bedroom, directly above where the painting hung. The leak had saturated the canvas, colors running together in rivulets of paint that pooled on the hardwood floor beneath. The meadow was ruined, the hills and trees now shapeless blurs of green and gold, and the figure that had been emerging. It was gone, washed away completely, as if it had never been there at all. I called the building superintendent about the lake, then carefully removed the painting from the wall. As I set it aside to dry, I noticed something tucked into the backing of the frame, a small, folded piece of paper that had been hidden there for decades. With trembling fingers, I unfolded it. It was a note written in faded blue ink. "Lawrence, I know what you've done. The truth is in the painting. It will reveal itself in time. Daniel." The leak was fixed the next day. I had the water-damaged painting professionally restored, but the restorer reported that there was no evidence of any figure ever having been in the background. The composition was, and had always been, simply a meadow at sunset. Detective Mercer contacted me a week later to inform me that Lawrence Gaines had passed away peacefully in his sleep. The case of Daniel Whitaker's disappearance would remain officially unsolved. The painting hangs in my living room now, nowhere near water pipes. Sometimes, in the half-light of dawn or dusk, I think I can see something shifting in the background near the tree line where the shadows gather. But when I look directly, there's nothing there, just hills and trees and the warm glow of a setting sun. And sometimes, when the house is quiet and my mind is drifting toward sleep, I wonder about those words. He put himself into his work. I wonder about the truth that was supposed to reveal itself in time. And I wonder if it's still revealing itself, even now, to anyone who looks closely enough. Story 3. I remember the first time I laid eyes on the Blackwood estate. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across its Victorian façade, creating patterns that seemed to shift and breathe across weathered brick. The air was heavy with the scent of rain-soaked earth and something else, something older. As I pulled into the graveled driveway, the crunch under my tires echoed too loudly in the unnatural stillness that surrounded the property. My name is Detective Thomas Mercer, and I've investigated homicides for 27 years. But this case was different from the moment I opened the file. It started with a call from a real estate agent on a Tuesday morning. Her voice trembled over the phone as she explained what she'd found while preparing to list the property, a house that had cycled through 6 different owners in just under 4 years. An unusual turnover rate that had become something of a local legend. "Detective," she'd whispered, "there are things in the house, personal things, like they never left, but they're not here anymore." I drive slowly to crime scenes, always have. It gives me time to prepare mentally, to create a blank canvas in my mind where I can paint the details without preconception. The Blackwood house required such preparation. 3 stories of faded grandeur stood before me, windows like vacant eyes watching my approach. The front door, heavy oak with intricate carvings, creaked open at my touch, as if the house had been expecting me. The foyer smelled of furniture polish and something metallic I couldn't quite identify. Nothing unusual at first glance, hardwood floors gleaming under undisturbed dust, a grandfather clock frozen at 3:17, an umbrella stand with 3 different umbrellas. "They're through here," the agent, Miss Holloway, said, guiding me toward the living room. What I saw next would stay with me for years. The living room was lived in. A coffee cup half full, its contents long since evaporated, leaving only a dark ring. An open book face down on the arm of a leather chair. Reading glasses perched on an end table. But it was the collection arranged meticulously on the antique dining table that drew my attention. Wallets, keys, watches, wedding rings, cell phones, items you don't leave home without, much less abandon in a house you're fleeing. 6 families, Ms. Holloway said softly beside me. 6 families, and every time I come to list the property again, there's more things they've left behind. I pulled on latex gloves, a habit, and gently opened one of the wallets. Driver's license for Martin Kepler, 42, from Cincinnati. Credit cards, 200 in cash, a photo of smiling children. "People don't leave these things behind," I murmured, more to myself than to her. "That's not all," she said, her voice dropping even lower. "Follow me." The upstairs bedrooms told a more intimate story. Closets with clothes still hanging, neatly pressed. Nightstands with prescription bottles, books with bookmarks, charging cables without phones. In one room, clearly a teenager's from the posters on the wall. A backpack sat ready by the desk, homework half completed. The last family, the Hendersons, had been here 3 weeks, Ms. Holloway explained. 4 of them parents, 2 kids. I got a text from Mrs. Henderson asking to meet urgently. When I arrived the next morning, the house was like this. Car still in the garage, no note, no calls, nothing. I examined the master bedroom carefully. The bed was made, but there was an indentation, as if someone had sat on the edge. A glass of water on the nightstand, lipstick on the rim. A journal lay open mid-entry. I hear it again tonight, the breathing in the walls. Tom doesn't believe me, says it's just the old pipes. But it's not. It's like the house is listening to us, watching us. I found James's, the entry ended mid-sentence. I closed the journal gently, my skin prickling despite the warmth of the day. Have missing persons reports been filed? I asked. For every family, police investigations found nothing. No financial activity after disappearance. No cell phone use. Nothing. Over the next few weeks, I dove deeper into the mystery of the Blackwood estate. Built in 1887 by Alistair Blackwood, a railroad magnate with a reputation for cruelty. 3 workers had died during construction, unusual but not unheard of for the time. Blackwood himself had disappeared in 1891, leaving behind all his possessions. The house had passed through dozens of owners since, with an unusual pattern emerging. Periods of stability followed by clusters of rapid turnover. I interviewed neighbors who spoke in hushed tones about strange sounds, lights that moved from room to room when the house was supposedly empty. One elderly woman across the street, Mrs. Featherstone, had lived there her entire life. That house breathes, she told me, rocking gently on her porch swing. Always has. You watch it long enough, you'll see the walls expand ever so slightly, like it's taking a deep breath. And those who stay too long, well, the house gets hungry sometimes. I dismissed her words as superstition, the kind that grows around any house with history. Until I spent the night there myself. Standard procedure for cold cases, immerse yourself in the environment. I set up in the living room with case files spread around me, a voice recorder, and a thermos of coffee. The electricity still worked. The previous owners had set up automatic payments that continued to draw from their accounts. At 1:17 a.m. I felt it, a subtle shift in air pressure like an elevator descending too quickly. My ears popped slightly. The house seemed to contract around me, the walls drawing in imperceptibly. At 2:43 a.m. I heard what Mrs. Henderson must have heard. Not breathing exactly, but a rhythmic, organic sound within the walls, too irregular to be pipes, too intentional to be settling. At 3:17 a.m., the time frozen on the grandfather clock, I realized the truth as a sudden chill wrapped around me like a physical presence. I watched, paralyzed, as my coffee cup slid gently across the table toward the edge, pulled by nothing visible. My case notes ruffled as if disturbed by a breeze, though the air was completely still. I felt it then, a presence filling the room like water rising, pressing against my skin, seeking entry. In that moment, I understood with perfect clarity what had happened to the families. They hadn't left. They hadn't disappeared. They had been absorbed. The Blackwood house didn't merely consume its inhabitants' possessions, it consumed them, incorporeal yet insatiable. The personal items weren't left behind, they were rejected. The house wanted living essence, not objects. I don't remember leaving, only the gravel crunching under my tires as I sped away, my breath fogging the windows from the inside while the night air was warm. The case remains officially unsolved. The house still stands, now cordoned off as a potential crime scene. Sometimes I drive by just to check. Each time the windows seem a little more like eyes, the door a little more like a mouth, waiting. Mrs. Featherstone died last month, heart failure, they said. The day before, she'd called me, her voice trembling. "It's looking at my house now, detective," she whispered. "I think it's still hungry." No one will buy the Blackwood estate now, not with 6 families missing. But sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I wonder if they're really missing at all. Or if in some way I can't comprehend they're still there, part of the house itself, merged with its ancient hunger, looking out through glass panes at a world they can no longer touch. I wonder if they're watching me right now as I write this report, my final act before retirement. I wonder if they know I'm the only one who understands what really happened to them. I wonder if the house remembers me. Story 4, the file was thin between my fingers, just a few sheets of paper documenting the beginning of something that would later consume months of my life. Outside my office window, October rain tapped against the glass with a gentle persistence, creating a soothing backdrop to the silence of the nearly empty police station. The clock on the wall moved its hands past midnight without ceremony. I was alone with her story now, and as I opened the manila folder, the paper released that distinct scent of bureaucracy and fading ink that has become so familiar in my 15 years as a detective. Sarah Miller, 29 years old, a librarian with auburn hair and a life that seemed unremarkable until she walked into our precinct on a Tuesday evening, her voice steady but her hands betraying her with subtle tremors as she placed them flat on the interview room table. "I need to report something," she had said. "I'm not sure if it's a crime yet, but it doesn't feel right." I remember how the fluorescent lights cast shadows beneath her eyes, how she kept tucking her hair behind her ear in a nervous gesture that would become familiar to me over the coming weeks. The tape recorder between us hummed softly, almost imperceptibly, as she began to tell me about the man who knew her secrets. It had started innocently enough, an online dating app, a few exchanges of messages that seemed normal, pleasant even. His name was David. He was an architect, or so he claimed. His profile picture showed a man in his mid-30s with kind eyes and a measured smile. Nothing about him raised any flags for Sarah, who described herself as cautious by nature. They had arranged to meet at a cafe downtown, a public place with large windows and constant foot traffic. She had done everything right. He was already there when I arrived, Sarah had told me, her voice taking on that distant quality people have when revisiting a memory. Sitting by the window, reading a physical newspaper. Who does that anymore? I thought it was charming. The cafe had been warm that afternoon, the scent of cinnamon and coffee creating a comfortable atmosphere that made Sarah feel at ease. She remembered sliding into the chair across from him, the metal legs scraping slightly against the tiled floor. He had folded his newspaper carefully before looking up at her with a smile that reached his eyes. "You must be Sarah," he had said. "I recognized you from your profile picture, though it doesn't capture how green your eyes are." Their conversation had flowed naturally at first. David asked about her work at the library, seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts on the books she recommended to patrons. He ordered a black coffee for himself, remembered that she had mentioned preferring tea in one of their messages. The waitress brought her Earl Grey with a slice of lemon, just as she liked it. Then things started to shift, Sarah had said, her fingers tracing invisible patterns on the interview room table. Subtle at first, he mentioned my cat by name Fitzgerald, which was strange because I'm almost certain I hadn't told him about my cat. I thought maybe I had mentioned it in passing and forgotten. But then David had asked her if the roses her mother had sent for her birthday last week had lasted. Sarah hadn't told him about any roses or that her birthday had just passed. When she questioned him, he had smiled in a way that made the cafe suddenly seem colder. "You told me everything," he had whispered, leaning slightly forward. "Last night." Those words hung in the interview room as Sarah's voice faltered. She had left the cafe immediately after that, heart pounding, walking quickly through crowded streets, constantly checking over her shoulder. David hadn't followed her, at least not that she could tell. I thumbed through the preliminary investigation notes in the file. We had checked the dating app, of course. David's profile had been deleted. The cafe's security cameras had captured him sitting at the table, but the angle wasn't ideal, just the back of his head, his face turned away from the camera for most of the encounter. The waitress remembered them, but couldn't recall anything distinctive about the man beyond well-dressed and polite. What had truly unsettled me, though, were the roses. When we visited Sarah's apartment, there they were on her kitchen counter, a dozen pink roses, her favorite color, in a simple glass vase. Her mother confirmed sending them for her birthday the previous week. How had David known? I live alone, Sarah had explained during our second interview. I double-check my locks every night. I close my curtains. I'm careful. Her voice had dropped to a whisper then. What did he mean last night? That question led us down a winding path of possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. We checked for signs of breaking and entering at her apartment. Nothing. Her phone and computer showed no evidence of hacking, though our tech unit couldn't rule it out completely. We looked into stalking patterns, compiled a list of men named David who matched the physical description in her area. The investigation expanded like ripples in still water, touching on dozens of potential leads that dissolved as quickly as they formed. 3 days after our initial interview, Sarah called me at 3:17 a.m., her voice tight with fear. He sent me an email, she said without preamble. It's from an address I don't recognize. It just says, "Did you change your locks? It won't matter." I advised her to stay with a friend, which she did. Her college roommate Melissa, who lived across town. We increased patrols in both neighborhoods, placed a trace on Sarah's communications. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. The case file grew thicker with reports and dead ends, but David remained a shadow, a voice without substance. Then came the package. It arrived at Melissa's apartment, addressed to Sarah. No return address, postmarked locally. Inside was a small leather-bound journal. Sarah recognized it immediately. It was her diary, which she kept in the drawer of her bedside table. Only this wasn't her actual diary, which was still safely in her apartment. This was an exact replica, containing perfect copies of her private thoughts, all the way up to her most recent entry from 3 days earlier. The last page, however, contained writing that wasn't hers. In handwriting that mimicked her own with uncanny precision were the words, "Some secrets should stay unspoken, Sarah, even in the privacy of your own home." My fingers paused on the photograph of that journal page, the hair on my arms rising despite the warmth of my office. The forensics report offered no fingerprints, no DNA, nothing to tell us who had created this perfect forgery of Sarah's most private thoughts. What happened next has shaped my understanding of fear in a way no other case has. The calls began always from different numbers, always when Sarah was alone, always with that same calm voice saying things only she should have known. Childhood memories she had never shared, conversations she had with Melissa behind closed doors, dreams she had written in her journal but told no one. We set up surveillance, installed security systems. Sarah began seeing a therapist to help manage her growing anxiety. The department allocated resources, determined to catch whoever was tormenting this woman whose only crime had been to agree to a coffee date. 6 weeks into the investigation, Sarah disappeared. She had gone to the corner store just 2 blocks from Melissa's apartment. Security footage showed her entering, purchasing a magazine and a bottle of water. She never emerged from the front entrance. The back door, normally locked and alarmed, had been found slightly ajar, the alarm system disabled. The search for Sarah Miller consumed the department for months. Her face appeared on news broadcasts, on posters throughout the city. We interviewed everyone in her life, tracked down every David who remotely fit the description. We followed every procedure, exhausted every resource. 3 months later, a package arrived at the precinct, addressed to me personally. Inside was a USB drive containing a single audio file. With growing dread, I plugged it into my computer and pressed play. Sarah's voice filled my office, calm and clear. "Detective, by the time you receive this, I will be gone. Not dead, please tell my parents I'm not dead, but somewhere he can't find me. Somewhere no one can find me. I've changed everything about myself. My appearance, my name, my history. The man who knew my secrets. I realized something about him that terrifies me more than anything else. He doesn't exist. There is no David. There never was. The person who's been watching me, who's been in my home, who knows things no one could know. It's someone close to me, someone I trust. I don't know who, and I can't risk staying to find out. I'm sorry to leave you with an unsolved case. Some mysteries are better left that way." The recording ended, leaving only the sound of rain against my window. The case remains open, technically unsolved. Sometimes I review the file late at night when the station is empty, turning each page with careful fingers, looking for something I might have missed. The dating app account was created using public library computers. The journal replica was professionally bound at a shop that doesn't require ID. The phone calls came from burner phones purchased with cash. Sarah Miller's disappearance has officially been reclassified as a voluntary absence. Her family receives postcards occasionally, never with a return address, always mailed from different cities. They say she sounds well, if cautious. She never mentions David. But I keep coming back to those words from their first meeting, the whisper across a caf table that changed everything. "You told me everything last night." What happens in the darkness of our homes when we believe we're alone? What secrets do we reveal to the shadows, thinking no one is listening? These are the questions that keep me awake now, that make me check my locks twice before bed, that cause me to speak more quietly even in empty rooms. Because sometimes the most terrifying truth is not that someone is watching you. It's that you'll never know who it is. Story 5. I remember the first time I noticed the footsteps. It was a Tuesday evening in late October, when the darkness had already settled over the small town of Millfield by 6 o'clock. Rain tapped gently against my windows, creating a soothing white noise that usually helped me drift into sleep. I had been living in apartment 2B for almost 3 months, the top floor of a modest 2-story building on Elm Street, a quiet residential area where most lights went out by 10. That night, as I lay in bed reading, I heard it, soft at first, almost imperceptible beneath the pattering rain. Footsteps, slow, methodical footsteps moving directly beneath my bedroom. I lowered my book, listening more intently as the sound continued, a deliberate heel-toe pattern that suggested someone walking with purpose, not just passing through. The following morning, I mentioned it casually to Mrs. Winters in 1B, the elderly woman who lived in the apartment directly below mine. "Did you have a visitor last night?" I asked, helping her with her groceries. She looked at me with genuine confusion in her pale blue eyes. "No, dear, I take my sleeping pill at 8. I don't hear a thing until morning." I nodded, dismissing it as perhaps pipes settling or the building creaking. These old structures make all sorts of noises, especially during the first cold nights of fall. But the footsteps returned the next night, and the night after that. always beginning around 11:15 p.m., always the same pattern, walking from what would be the living room area through to where the bedroom would be, pausing and then back again, sometimes continuing for up to an hour. After a week, I found myself lying awake each night, waiting for them to begin. I started timing them, noting the patterns, wondering if I was becoming obsessive or if there was truly something worth investigating. On the 15th night, I finally decided to speak with my landlord, Mr. Greaves. He was an unremarkable man in his 60s who handled maintenance issues with reluctant efficiency and collected rent with much more enthusiasm. "Mr. Greaves," I said, catching him in the small lobby as he sorted through mail, "I've been hearing strange noises at night, footsteps coming from below my apartment." He barely looked up from his stack of envelopes. "Mrs. Winters doesn't move around much at night, says her arthritis gets worse after sundown." "No, not from her apartment," I clarified, leaning against the wall. "From below that, it sounds like it's coming from underneath the first floor." His hands stilled. The envelope he was holding trembled slightly. "There is no basement," he said flatly, finally meeting my eyes. Something in his gaze made my skin prickle. It wasn't annoyance or dismissal, it was fear. "The building plans clearly show no basement level," he continued, his voice taking on an artificial casualness. "It's just the 2 floors and a crawl space that's maybe 3 feet high. Nobody could walk around down there." I nodded slowly, not wanting to push further. Something about his reaction suggested this wasn't the first time he'd heard this complaint. That night I couldn't sleep. The footsteps began at their usual time, but knowing that there couldn't be anyone walking beneath me made the sound unbearable. I pressed my ear to the floor, then grabbed a water glass from my nightstand, placing its rim against the floorboards and listening through the bass, an old detective trick I'd once read about. The footsteps became clearer, more defined, and something else, a faint humming, a melody I couldn't quite place. The next day I visited the local library. The building on Elm Street was over 100 years old, and I wondered what history it might hold. The librarian directed me to their local history section, where I spent hours scanning through microfiche of old newspapers and property records. What I found sent a chill through me. The property had originally been a single-family home converted to apartments in the 1960s. But before that, in the 1940s, there was a small notation about a renovation that had closed off the lower level. Not filled it in, closed it off. I dug deeper. A newspaper article from 1943 mentioned the disappearance of the home's owner, Henry Blackwood. He had been a reclusive man who, according to neighbors, had become increasingly paranoid after his wife's death. The article mentioned police had searched the home but found no evidence of foul play. He was simply gone. 2 weeks later, another article appeared. The new owners had reported strange noises. The matter was dismissed as settling of the house. I continued my research, finding scattered reports over the decades, tenants complaining of noises, unexplained phenomena, always concentrated on the first floor, and in 3 separate instances, reports of footsteps from below. That evening, I knocked on Mrs. Winters' door. When she answered, I asked if I could come in for a moment. Her apartment was a mirror image of mine, though filled with decades of collected trinkets and family photos. "Mrs. Winters, have you ever heard anything strange in this building?" I asked carefully, accepting the tea she offered. She sat down slowly, her arthritic hands wrapping around her own cup. "You're hearing them too, aren't you? The footsteps." My heart quickened. You've heard them. Not for years now, she said, looking toward her bedroom. They were worst when I first moved in almost 30 years ago. Back then I slept in the bedroom, but after a few months I couldn't bear it anymore. That's why I converted the dining room to my bedroom. It's the only part of the apartment where you can't hear them. I leaned forward. Mr. Greaves says there's no basement. There isn't, she said, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. Not officially, but before they converted this place, Henry Blackwood built something down there. A shelter, they say, got paranoid during the war, thought we were going to be invaded. What happened to him? I asked, though I was beginning to piece it together myself. Nobody knows for certain. Some say he just left town, others think. She trailed off. Think what? That he never left at all. She sipped her tea, hands trembling slightly. The family that bought this place after him, they were going to renovate. They knocked down a wall and found that the basement had been sealed off completely. Concrete poured over the entrance. They decided it wasn't worth the expense to break it open. I returned to my apartment with my mind racing. That night I lay awake waiting. At precisely 11:17 p.m. the footsteps began. Without allowing myself to reconsider, I grabbed my phone's flashlight and went downstairs. The building's small utility room was unlocked. Inside, behind a stack of paint cans, I found what looked like a patch in the wall, newer concrete against the old foundation. I pressed my ear against it. The footsteps were clearer here, unmistakable, and the humming, a melancholy tune that I now recognized as a popular song from the 1940s. The next day I gave my notice to Mr. Greaves. His face showed both relief and guilt as he accepted it. "You're not the first," he said quietly. "Some stay for years like Mrs. Winters. They learn to live with it, others can't." "Don't you want to know what's down there?" I asked. "Who's down there?" He looked at me with tired eyes. Some mysteries are better left alone. If Henry Blackwood is still walking beneath us after all these years, what good would come from disturbing him? I moved out the following week, but I couldn't let go of the mystery. I continued my research, looking into the history of Henry Blackwood, finding old photographs, speaking with elderly residents who remembered rumors about the house on Elm Street. 3 months later, I received a call from Mrs. Winters. "They're renovating," she said without preamble. The new owner of the building decided to investigate the sealed basement. I drove back to Millfield the next day. The small apartment building was surrounded by construction equipment. A contractor I spoke with told me they had broken through the concrete seal the previous morning. "What did they find?" I asked. "A fully furnished basement apartment," he said, shaking his head in disbelief. "Like a time capsule from the 1940s, everything perfectly preserved. Even had an old wind-up record player that still worked." "And was there anyone there?" I asked, my voice catching. He gave me a strange look. "No, of course not, just an empty room." He paused, then added, "Though the weirdest thing, there was a record on the player. The needle was down, like someone had been listening to it just before we broke through." That night, for the first time in months, I thought about the footsteps, those slow, deliberate steps pacing beneath an apartment where no one should be walking. I wondered if Mrs. Winters would sleep better now, knowing what lay beneath her floor. I wondered if the footsteps would finally stop. But somehow I knew they wouldn't, because whatever walked below apartment 1B didn't need a physical form to continue its eternal pacing, its endless waiting for something or someone that would never return. Sometimes I still think about it on rainy nights, about Henry Blackwood, who built himself a shelter against imagined invaders, only to become trapped in his own paranoia. Whether he died down there or simply disappeared, his footsteps remain, a ghostly echo caught in an endless loop, walking from living room to bedroom and back again, night after night for over 70 years. And I wonder, if you were to visit that building on Elm Street, would you hear them too? Those steady footsteps from the neighbor who lived below. The neighbor who, according to all official records, couldn't possibly exist. Story 6. I've always been the kind of detective who works the night shift by choice. There's a clarity to investigating when the world goes quiet, when the only sound is the occasional passing car and the soft hum of fluorescent lights overhead. My name is Detective Thomas Mercer, and this particular case still follows me even now, years after we closed the file. It began on a Tuesday in late October, the kind of autumn night where the air feels crisp against your skin and fallen leaves crunch softly underfoot. I remember the smell of rain on concrete as I pulled into the parking lot of the Meridian office complex, an unremarkable 8-story building on the edge of downtown. Nothing about its glass and steel exterior suggested anything unusual. Nothing except the call we'd received from a night security guard named Alan Whitaker. His voice was shaking, my partner Lydia had said when she handed me the assignment. Said he found something impossible. I've learned over the years that people use the word impossible rather loosely when they're frightened. But as I rode the elevator up to the 7th floor, the soft mechanical whir filling the otherwise silent space, I couldn't have anticipated what impossible would mean that night. Alan Whitaker had worked security at Meridian for 11 years. A man in his late 50s with thinning gray hair and hands that showed years of manual labor before taking this easier gig for retirement. His eyes had the glassy, distant look of someone who had seen something they couldn't process. I was doing my usual rounds, he explained, his voice barely above a whisper. I've walked these hallways thousands of times, detective. Every night, same pattern, same doors, same everything. He led me down the corridor, his flashlight beam steady despite his trembling hand. The sound of our footsteps echoed softly against the polished floor tiles. But tonight was different, he continued. I turned the corner and there was a door that's never been there before. I've heard all manner of strange claims in my career, but something in his certainty made me pay closer attention. We stopped before what appeared to be a standard office door, dark wood with a frosted glass window and a simple metal handle. Room 742. This isn't on the building plans, Alan said, pulling out a folded blueprint from his back pocket. The paper crinkled softly as he spread it across a nearby table. His finger traced along the 7th floor layout. See, rooms 741, then 743. There is no 742. There never has been. I studied the plans. He was right, the room numbering skipped from 741 to 743, though the physical space between them appeared continuous on the blueprint. An oversight in the documentation, perhaps, a simple clerical error. When was the last time you did rounds on this floor? I asked. Last night, Alan replied, a hint of defiance in his otherwise shaky voice. This door wasn't here, I swear on my life. The weight of his keys jangled softly as he fumbled for the master key. The lock clicked open with surprising ease for a door that supposedly shouldn't exist. As Alan pushed it open, cool air wafted out from the darkness within. He reached for the light switch on the wall. The fluorescent lights flickered to life, revealing a small, nondescript office. A single desk sat in the center, bare except for a manila folder placed precisely in the middle. No computer, no phone, no personal effects that might suggest occupation. The walls were blank, no calendars, no artwork, no certificates, just empty beige paint stretching from floor to ceiling. "I didn't touch anything," Alan said, remaining in the doorway as I stepped inside. The room felt wrong somehow, not in any obvious way I could immediately identify, but in the subtle way that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. Perhaps it was too clean, too new. The carpet beneath my feet showed no wear patterns. The paint had no scuffs. The air smelled faintly of fresh paint and new carpet, not the recycled, climate-controlled air that permeated the rest of the building. I approached the desk slowly, the soft squeak of my shoes against the carpet the only sound in the room. The manila folder was unlabeled from the top. With gloved hands, I carefully opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper with Alan Whitaker's name printed at the top. Below that was his employee ID number, his home address, and his daily schedule, including details that seemed impossibly intimate. The time he woke up each morning, what he typically ate for breakfast, the route he drove to work, and most disturbing of all, a notation that on Tuesday, October 15th at 11:27 p.m., he would discover this very room. The timestamp on the document was from 3 weeks ago. Behind this sheet was a photograph. As I lifted it, I felt my breath catch. It showed Alan standing in the doorway of this room, his flashlight in hand, his expression one of confusion and alarm. It was unmistakably him, in the clothes he was wearing right now, from the angle of someone standing precisely where I was standing. The photo was dated with today's date and time-stamped 11:27 p.m., approximately 20 minutes ago, when he claimed to have discovered the door. "Alan," I said, my voice deliberately measured and calm, "did you see anyone take your picture when you found this room?" When I turned to show him the photo, his face drained of color. He backed away, shaking his head slowly. "That's impossible," he whispered. "There was no one here, and that's exactly how I found it just now." I bagged the folder and its contents as evidence and conducted a thorough search of the room. No cameras were visible, no recording devices, no hidden compartments or secret doors, just an ordinary office that, according to both Alan and the building plans, should not exist. Over the next few days, we interviewed everyone connected to the building. The property management company confirmed the blueprints there was no room 742 in the original design. The construction company that built the structure 12 years ago had the same plans. Former security guards, cleaning staff, office workers who spent years on that floor, no one remembered a room 742. We pulled surveillance footage from the hallway cameras. In recordings from the previous week, the wall where the door now stood was clearly empty. Then, inexplicably, in the footage from the night before Alan's discovery, there's a 3-minute gap in the recording. When the feed resumes, the door is there, as if it had always been part of the building. The folder and photograph yielded no fingerprints except Alan's and mine. The paper was standard office stock, available anywhere. The printer identification showed it came from a common model used throughout the building. The photograph paper was similarly untraceable. 5 days into the investigation, I arrived at the Meridian building to follow up on a few details. When I reached the 7th floor and walked down the now familiar hallway, I stopped short. Where room 742 had been, there was now only a solid wall, no door, no evidence a door had ever existed. Building maintenance swore no work had been done. The surveillance footage from the previous night showed another brief gap and then no door. Alan Whitaker gave his notice that day. He refused to return to the building, even to collect his final paycheck. When I visited him at home a week later, he was already packing to move. "I can't explain it," he told me, his hands shaking as he placed books into a cardboard box. "But whoever left that folder knew things about me they couldn't possibly know. They knew exactly when I'd find that room. They had my picture before I even opened the door." He paused, looking up at me with haunted eyes. "What if they're watching me right now? What if they always have been?" The case remains officially unsolved. We found no evidence of criminal activity, no threats, no signs of breaking and entering or tampering. The official report suggests a possible prank by other building employees, though none came forward and no evidence supported this theory. Sometimes on quiet nights like this one, as I sit at my desk reviewing other cases, I find myself coming back to the folder from room 742. I've memorized every detail of that photograph, Alan standing in the doorway, the exact angle of his flashlight beam, the timestamp that perfectly matched his discovery. And I think about what I never told him, what I never included in the official report. There was a second photograph in that folder behind the first. A photograph of me standing at that desk, holding the first photograph with an expression of dawning comprehension on my face. It was time-stamped exactly 1 week after Alan found the room. In the background of the image, partially visible over my shoulder, was another door that doesn't exist on any blueprint, this one leading directly off the mysterious office. And it was standing slightly ajar, as though someone had just stepped through it. The room is gone now, but sometimes when I walk past the Meridian building during my late-night investigations, I look up at the 7th floor. And sometimes, just sometimes, I see a light on in a window that shouldn't be there. I've never gone back to check. Some doors once opened are better left closed. Some rooms are never meant to be found. And some mysteries, I've come to believe, are warnings rather than puzzles to be solved. Story 7. The chill of October hung in the air as I pulled into the driveway of 1842 Sycamore Lane. The gravel crunched beneath the tires of my unmarked sedan, announcing my arrival to the quiet suburban home. Rain had fallen earlier, leaving everything with a glossy sheen under the street lamps. I killed the engine but sat for a moment, studying the modest 2-story house. Nothing about it suggested the strange sequence of events that had brought me here. My name is Detective Thomas Mercer, and I've been with the Oakwood Police Department for 17 years. I specialize in cases that others find difficult to categorize. This particular file had been passed to me 3 days ago, and I hadn't slept well since. I collected my leather-bound notebook from the passenger seat and made my way to the front door. The porch light cast long shadows across the welcome mat as I rang the bell. Footsteps approached from inside, hesitant, measured steps. When the door opened, I was greeted by a woman in her mid-30s, brown hair tied back, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. "Ms. Rebecca Winters?" I asked, though I knew who she was. I'd studied her file thoroughly. "Yes," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "You must be Detective Mercer." She invited me in, and the scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. The house was neat, organized family photos arranged carefully on the mantel, a stack of literary journals on the coffee table. Nothing seemed out of place, which made what had happened here all the more unsettling. We sat in her living room, the ticking of an antique grandfather clock the only sound for several moments. I opened my notebook, the pages crackling softly. "I know you've already given your statement to Officer Daniels," I began, "but I'd like to hear about the call again in your own words." Every detail matters. Rebecca's fingers tensed around her coffee mug. She stared into the dark liquid as if searching for words. It was last Thursday evening around 8:15, she began. I was grading papers. I teach English at the community college. The phone rang and I answered without checking the caller ID. I assumed it was a colleague or maybe my sister. She paused, taking a slow, deliberate breath. But the voice on the other end, it was mine, my own voice, not recorded, not a similar voice, my voice. It whispered, "Get out of the house." Then silence. The grandfather clock chimed softly in the hallway, marking the half hour. Outside, a car drove past, its headlights briefly illuminating the room through the sheer curtains. "What did you do next?" I asked, making a note in my book. The pen's scratch against paper seemed unnaturally loud in the quiet room. I thought it was some kind of prank at first. I called the number back immediately, but the line was dead. Not busy, not ringing, dead, as if the number didn't exist. I nodded, letting the silence stretch between us. In my experience, people fill silences with details they might otherwise forget to mention. I checked all the rooms, she continued after a moment. Every closet under the beds. I even went down to the basement, though I hate going down there after dark. There was nothing, no one. The house creaked softly around us, the normal settling sounds of an older home. Yet I noticed how Rebecca's eyes darted toward each noise, how her shoulders remained tense. I pulled out the phone records we'd obtained from her service provider. "The call came from your landline," I said. "This landline." I gestured to the cordless phone sitting in its cradle on a side table. "That's impossible," she whispered. "I was alone in the house." The call lasted exactly 12 seconds, I continued, sliding the paper across the coffee table for her to see. Beginning at 8:17 p.m. and ending at 8:17 and 12 seconds. Rebecca's hand trembled slightly as she reached for the document. "I don't understand how this is possible." Neither did I, but I wasn't ready to admit that yet. In 17 years on the force, I'd seen cases of phone spoofing, of elaborate hoaxes, even of psychological breaks where victims convinced themselves of impossible scenarios. But something about this case felt different, the precision of it, the simplicity. "Have you received any other unusual calls, any strange occurrences in the house before this?" She hesitated, and I knew there was more. "About 2 weeks ago, I came home from work and found my bedroom window open. I always keep it locked. Nothing was missing, nothing disturbed. I convinced myself I'd left it open by accident." I made another note, and since the call, "I hear things sometimes, footsteps when I'm alone. The floorboard in the upstairs hallway creaks like someone's walking across it. Last night I woke up at 3:12 a.m. to the sound of breathing beside my bed, but when I turned on the light, no one was there." The clock ticked steadily in the background as I considered her words. My pen hovered over the paper, unsure of what to write. How does one document the impossible? "Would you mind showing me around the house?" I asked. Rebecca led me through each room, the kitchen with its spotless countertops, the dining room rarely used, her home office cluttered with student papers. Upstairs, we visited the spare bedroom converted to a library, the bathroom with its old-fashioned clawfoot tub, and finally her bedroom at the end of the hall. "This is where I heard the breathing," she said, lingering in the doorway as if reluctant to enter. I stepped inside, noting the heavy curtains, the bedside table with its lamp and stack of books, the closet door slightly ajar. Nothing seemed unusual, yet the air felt heavier here, like the atmosphere before a storm. And the phone that received the call, where was it? I had it with me in my office downstairs. We returned to the living room, where I examined the landline that had supposedly made the impossible call. A standard cordless model, perhaps 5 years old. I checked the call history, nothing from last Thursday evening, which meant someone had deleted it. Ms. Winters, do you live here alone? Yes, for about 3 years now, since the divorce. And your ex-husband, what's your relationship like with him? She smiled faintly, amicable surprisingly. He moved to Seattle for work. We speak maybe once a month, mostly about logistical things. I nodded, making more notes. Does anyone else have a key to your house? My sister has one for emergencies, and I suppose my ex never returned his, though I can't imagine he'd come all the way from Seattle just to make a cryptic phone call. The rain had started again outside, a gentle patter against the windows. I closed my notebook and stood, walking to the window that overlooked the backyard. The motion sensor light flicked on as something, probably a cat or raccoon, moved across the lawn. I'd like to install some equipment if you're comfortable with that, I said, turning back to Rebecca. Voice-activated recorders, a camera for the hallway upstairs. It might help us understand what's happening here. She agreed readily, clearly relieved that I wasn't dismissing her experience. 2 hours later, the house was subtly wired, nothing intrusive, but enough to capture any unusual activity. As I prepared to leave, Rebecca hesitated at the door. Detective Mercer, do you think I'm in danger? I considered my words carefully. I don't know yet, but I would recommend staying with a friend for a few nights, just until we have more information. I can't run away from my own house, she said, a quiet determination in her voice. Whatever this is, I need to face it. I respected her decision, though it troubled me. I left my card with strict instructions to call at any hour if anything strange occurred again. 3 uneventful days passed. The recordings showed nothing unusual, just the normal sounds of an old house settling and a woman living her solitary life. I began to wonder if the incident had been some elaborate prank after all, or perhaps a one-time glitch in the phone system. Then at 2:37 a.m. on the 4th night, my phone rang. Detective Mercer, Rebecca's voice was tight with fear. It happened again, the call, but this time the message was different. What did it say? I asked, already reaching for my clothes. There was a pause, filled only with her shaky breathing. It said, I'm already inside. I broke every speed limit on my way to Sycamore Lane. When I arrived, every light in Rebecca's house was on, blazing against the darkness. She was waiting on the porch, wrapped in a heavy cardigan despite the mild night. Show me, I said simply. Inside, she led me to her home office, where the landline's call history now showed an incoming call at 2:22 a.m. from her own number, 15 minutes before she'd called me. I checked the recordings right away, she said, pulling up the audio files on her computer. I thought they would finally show something. She clicked play on the file from the hallway recorder. For several seconds there was nothing but the ambient sounds of the house. Then, clear as day, came the sound of the phone ringing downstairs. 2 rings, then Rebecca's voice answering. A pause, then a gasp of fear. But there was no incoming voice on the recording. No whispered warning from her doppelganger. just Rebecca responding to silence. "Play it again," I said, leaning closer. We listened 3 more times. Each time, the same result, Rebecca clearly reacting to words that weren't captured by the recording. "This doesn't make sense," she whispered. I heard it, my own voice telling me someone was already inside. I pulled out my phone and called the department, requesting an immediate trace on Rebecca's landline. While we waited, I checked every room in the house again, this time looking for signs of intrusion, a forced window, a picked lock, nothing. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. It was the tech from the department. "Detective, we've got something strange here," he said. "The call to Ms. Winter's house at 2:22 a.m., it didn't come from her landline after all." "Then where did it come from?" I asked. "That's just it. According to our trace, it came from a phone booth." "A phone booth where?" "The old one outside Mercy Hospital. The thing is, detective, that phone booth was removed 3 years ago." A chill ran down my spine as I looked at Rebecca, who was watching me with wide, frightened eyes. "There's something else," the tech continued. "We checked with the hospital security cameras. At exactly 2:22 a.m., they show a woman entering the area where that phone booth used to be. She stands there for exactly 12 seconds, then walks away." "Can you identify her?" I asked, though somehow I already knew the answer. "The footage is grainy, but she looks very much like Ms. Winters." I thanked him and hung up, trying to process what I'd just heard. Rebecca was staring at me, waiting. "What is it? What did they find?" I hesitated, unsure how to explain the impossible. "The call didn't come from your house," I said finally. "It came from a location across town at exactly the same time you were here answering it." Her face paled. "How is that possible?" I had no answer for her. In all my years as a detective, I'd never encountered anything like this, a case where the evidence pointed to something beyond rational explanation. That night I stayed in Rebecca's living room, keeping watch. The house remained quiet, the recorders capturing nothing but silence and occasional creaks. As dawn approached, I found myself staring at the phone, willing it to ring to give us some clue to unravel this mystery. It never did, but as I was leaving that morning, Rebecca stopped me at the door. "I remembered something," she said. 3 years ago, when my divorce was finalized, I was in a dark place. One night I drove to Mercy Hospital thinking the worst thoughts. I sat in my car in the parking lot for hours, just trying to find the courage to go inside and ask for help." She paused, her gaze distant with memory. "There was a phone booth there then. I remember looking at it and thinking I should call someone, my sister, a friend, anyone, but I didn't. I drove home instead and somehow found the strength to keep going." I looked at her thoughtfully. "You never went into the hospital?" "No, I never made it past the parking lot." As I drove away from Rebecca's house that morning, the pieces of the puzzle shifted in my mind but refused to form a coherent picture. A call from her own number that wasn't from her house. A phantom caller using her voice from a non-existent phone booth. A warning to get out, then a claim of already being inside. The case remains open on my desk. Rebecca Winters has installed a new security system and changed her phone number. She reports no further strange calls, but sometimes, she says, she still wakes in the night to the sound of breathing beside her bed. And sometimes, when I drive past Mercy Hospital late at night, I find myself slowing down, looking for the ghost of a phone booth and the woman who might be making an impossible call, a woman trying to warn herself of a danger I still don't understand. Some mysteries have no neat resolution, no cleanly tied threads. Some simply exist, challenging everything we think we know about reality. The call from her own house is one of those cases, a whisper in the dark that continues to echo unanswered. Story 8. It appeared on her doorstep one evening, a porcelain doll, perfectly dressed, with eyes that seemed almost real. But when she looked closer, she saw something scratched into the back of its neck, her own name. I remember the case files landing on my desk on a Tuesday morning. The kind of morning where the autumn light filters through Venetian blinds, casting long golden stripes across stacks of manila folders. The radiator in my office hummed with a constant, soothing white noise that had become the soundtrack to my investigations over the years. I'd been with the department for 15 years now, working in the special cases unit, where we handled the incidents that didn't fit neatly into the usual categories. The coffee in my mug had gone cold, but I sipped it anyway as I opened the folder labeled Harmon, E-Case 47291. Inside was a collection of photographs, high quality, taken with care. The first showed a porch, ordinary in every way. Weathered wood, a welcome mat frayed at the edges, a potted plant dropping leaves onto concrete. And there, centered in the frame like an actor taking the stage, was the doll. It wasn't what you might imagine when someone says doll. This wasn't a child's toy, mass-produced and disposable. This was craftsmanship, porcelain skin with the faintest blush of pink at the cheeks, glass eyes of a deep amber that caught the light in a way that made them seem aware, knowing. The clothes were period-specific, Victorian perhaps, with intricate lacework that must have taken hours to create. I placed the photographs side by side across my desk. Each showed the doll from different angles. The final image made me pause. It captured the back of the doll's neck, where a name had been etched with what appeared to be a fine-tipped instrument, Elizabeth Harmon. Turning to the written statement, I learned that Elizabeth, Liz to her friends, lived alone in a small bungalow on the outskirts of Millfield. She worked remotely as a graphic designer, rarely had visitors, and had no known enemies. On the evening of October 3rd, she had returned from grocery shopping to find the doll sitting upright on her porch, facing the door as if waiting for her. No packaging, no note, no indication of who had left it. What made this more than just an unusual gift was the name, her name, carved into the doll's porcelain flesh. Liz had never seen the doll before. She had no family traditions involving dolls, no childhood connection to them. In fact, in her statement, she mentioned a mild discomfort with dolls in general. The department would typically dismiss something like this as a prank, but there had been 3 similar incidents in neighboring counties over the past 18 months, all involving dolls, all bearing the recipient's name. I lifted the phone and dialed Elizabeth Harmon's number. Her voice was steady when she answered, but there was an undertone of tension that vibrated beneath her words, like a guitar string pulled too tight. Ms. Harmon, this is Detective Morgan with the Special Cases Unit. I'd like to ask you a few questions about the doll you found. I've already told everything to the officer who came to take my statement, she said, her words measured, deliberate. I understand, but sometimes with a little distance, we remember details that didn't seem important at first. Would you mind if I stopped by this afternoon? Silence hung between us for several seconds before she agreed. The drive to Elizabeth's house took me through neighborhoods where the trees were just beginning to surrender their leaves. The windshield of my car became a canvas for shadows that danced and swayed with each passing branch. Radio news murmured softly, something about stock markets and foreign policy, but my mind was elsewhere, trying to connect invisible threads between four seemingly unrelated people who had received these unsettling gifts. Elizabeth's house was exactly as it appeared in the photographs, modest but well maintained, a single story with a small porch and a yard that showed signs of care. She greeted me at the door, a woman in her mid-30s with dark hair pulled back into a practical ponytail. Her eyes met mine directly, analyzing me as much as I was analyzing her. "Thank you for seeing me," I said as she invited me inside. "I won't take much of your time." Her living room was minimalist, a couch, a coffee table, bookshelves filled with design references and fiction. No family photos that I could see, no personal touches that revealed much about who she was. "The doll," I said, settling into an armchair she gestured toward. "Where is it now?" "In the garage, in a box. I didn't want it in the house." I nodded, understanding her discomfort. "And you've never seen it before. Nothing about it seemed familiar." Elizabeth shook her head, then paused, her brow furrowing slightly. Actually, there was something. The dress it was wearing, blue with white lace trim and tiny pearl buttons. I had a dress like that when I was a child, for special occasions. There's a photograph of me wearing it somewhere in my mother's albums. A chill traced its way along my spine. This was new information, not in her original statement. "Do you have that photograph?" "No, but my mother would. She lives in Oregon now." I made a note to follow up on this. "Ms. Harmon, have you noticed anything else unusual lately? Phone calls where no one speaks, the sense of being watched, mail that's been opened and resealed." Her eyes widened slightly at the last question. "My mail, yes. Last week I received a bill that looked like it had been opened and taped closed again. I thought it was just damaged in transit." We talked for another hour. Small details emerged, a garden gnome that had been moved from one side of her yard to the other, a window she was certain she'd closed but found open upon returning home. Tiny disruptions in the fabric of her routine that on their own meant nothing, but together formed a pattern of deliberate intrusion. After leaving Elizabeth's home, I drove directly to the department's evidence room. The dolls from the previous cases were stored there, each in its own clear plastic container like specimens in a laboratory. Side by side, the similarities were striking. All four had the same quality of craftsmanship, the same attention to detail. Each wore clothing that, according to our interviews, resembled something the recipient had owned or worn in childhood. I lifted the container holding the doll left for Elizabeth Harmon and studied it more closely. The porcelain was aged but not antique. The clothing, while detailed, showed signs of being handmade rather than factory produced. Most dolls of this quality would have a maker's mark somewhere, but these had none. They were, in effect, untraceable. What connected the recipients? On the surface, nothing. Different ages, different professions, living in different areas. But there had to be something, a shared experience, a common acquaintance, some thread that tied them together in the mind of whoever was creating and delivering these dolls. Returning to my office, I spread out the files of all four cases and began the slow process of looking for connections. The light outside my window gradually shifted from afternoon gold to evening purple, then to the deep blue of night. The sounds of the department quieted as colleagues left for the day, but I remained, drawn deeper into the mystery. It was past midnight when I found it, a summer camp mentioned in passing by one of the previous recipients. A place called Lakeview, which had closed nearly 20 years ago following a tragic accident. I checked the other files, and there it was again, buried in background information. All four recipients had attended Lakeview Camp during the same summer 23 years ago. The next morning, I called Elizabeth Harmon again. "Ms. Harmon, did you ever attend a summer camp called Lakeview? It would have been when you were around 12 years old." The pause on the other end of the line lasted so long that I thought we'd lost the connection. Then her voice returned, softer than before. "Yes, the summer before they closed it down. How did you know?" "The other people who received dolls like yours, they were all at Lakeview that same summer." "Oh," she said, and I could hear the realization in her voice, the connections forming in her mind as they had in mine. There was a girl there, Amanda Fletcher. She was different. She made dolls, little ones from scraps of fabric and buttons. She gave one to each of us in our cabin. I wrote the name down. Do you remember anything else about her? "She drowned, that's why they closed the camp, but it wasn't an accident, detective. Everyone knew it wasn't an accident." That afternoon, I requested any available records on Amanda Fletcher and the incident at Lakeview Camp. What came back was a thin file, most of the details redacted or missing. The official ruling had been accidental drowning, but there were notes from the investigating officer expressing doubts, witness statements that contradicted each other, and a mention of dolls found in Amanda's belongings, dolls she had made to resemble each of her cabin mates. The pieces were coming together, forming a picture that filled me with both clarity and dread. Someone connected to Amanda Fletcher was reaching out to the girls who had been in her cabin that summer. Someone who knew the details of their childhoods, who could craft dolls with unnerving precision, who wanted them to remember. But remember what? The answer came 3 days later when Elizabeth Harmon called me in a panic. She had received an envelope containing a single photograph, a group of young girls standing on a dock, arms linked, smiling at the camera. And behind them, partially obscured, was Amanda Fletcher, watching them with an expression that could only be described as longing. "Turn it over," Elizabeth said, her voice trembling. I asked her to read what was written there, and her words sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the autumn air. "I know what you did. I was there, and now I'm back." The investigation continues, the truth still hidden beneath layers of time and silence. 4 women connected by a summer long ago, 4 dolls that serve as both message and warning, and somewhere watching from the shadows, someone who believes they are delivering long overdue justice. As I sit in my office studying the photograph of those smiling girls, I can't help but wonder what happened on that dock 23 years ago, what secret binds these women together, and how many more dolls are waiting to be delivered, each bearing a name etched in porcelain, a name belonging to someone who knows exactly why they've received it. The answers are coming, I can feel it, but like all truths buried for too long, this one will not emerge without a struggle, without pain, without forcing those involved to face what they've tried so hard to forget. Sometimes justice arrives in unexpected forms. Sometimes it takes years to find its way to your doorstep. Sometimes it comes in the shape of a porcelain doll with eyes that seem to know your every secret. Story 9, she had moved 3 times in the past year trying to escape the nightmares, but each time she found the same crumbling house standing at the end of her street. No matter how far she went, it always found her. I remember the first time I heard about the Langley case. It was an unusually warm October evening, the kind where the air hangs heavy with unspoken promises of rain that never comes. The manila folder on my desk was too thin for a case that had been open for nearly 6 months. My fingertips traced the edges of the folder, feeling the slight roughness of the paper, as the ceiling fan above made lazy circles, pushing the stale air around my office. Sarah Langley, 34 years old, elementary school teacher, no history of mental illness, no prior criminal record, nothing that would suggest she would one day walk into the local police station, her eyes wide and unfocused, clutching a small notebook filled with addresses and crude drawings of what appeared to be the same Victorian-style house. "I need protection," the report quoted her saying. "It's following me, the house, it's always there." The officers on duty that night did what they could. They took her statement, offered her water in a small paper cup that left damp rings on the metal table of the interview room. They asked all the standard questions. Was someone threatening her? Did she feel unsafe at home? Had she been taking any medications? Sarah had answered each question with increasing frustration, her voice never rising above a whisper, but her knuckles turning white as she gripped the edge of the table. "You don't understand," she had said. "I've moved from Oak Ridge to Westfield to Pine Creek, 3 different towns, and each time within days that house appears at the end of my street, the same house, the exact same house." The officer's report noted that they had sent a patrol car to the address she was currently residing at. There was indeed an old Victorian house at the end of the block, a foreclosure that had been on the market for years. Nothing unusual about it except for its state of disrepair. I sipped my coffee, now lukewarm and bitter, as I read through the sparse details. Something about this case pulled at me, like the gentle but insistent tug of a current beneath still water. I've always been drawn to the cases others dismiss, the ones that fall into the cracks between logical explanation and something else entirely. The next page in the file contained photographs. Sarah had taken them herself on her phone, images of 3 different streets in 3 different neighborhoods, and at the end of each street stood what did appear to be the same house, a 2-story Victorian with a wraparound porch, peeling paint and windows that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. I pulled out my magnifying glass, the handle cool and familiar in my palm, studying each image closely. Same decorative trim around the eaves. Same cracked 3rd step leading up to the porch. Same missing spindle on the railing. But that was impossible. I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking softly beneath me. The logical explanation was simple. Sarah Langley was experiencing some kind of delusion. Perhaps she was unknowingly seeking out similar houses, her mind playing tricks on her perception. Or maybe there was someone in her life, an ex, a stalker, who was orchestrating an elaborate gaslighting campaign. Yet something about the steady gaze she maintained in her intake photo suggested neither delusion nor fear of a specific person. Her eyes held the exhausted clarity of someone who has accepted an impossible truth. I decided to visit her current residence myself. The address led me to a modest apartment complex on the outskirts of Pine Creek, the kind with uniformly beige siding and small balconies barely large enough for a potted plant. As I parked my car, I could see the house at the end of the street. It stood apart from the apartment buildings, an architectural anomaly that seemed to belong to another time entirely. I approached Sarah's apartment, the concrete walkway still damp from an earlier rainfall. The scent of wet earth mingled with the faint aroma of someone cooking tomato sauce nearby. I knocked, the sound echoing in the quiet afternoon. No answer. The neighbor, an elderly woman with curlers in her hair and a cardigan despite the warmth, informed me that Sarah had moved out 3 days ago. No forwarding address, no notice to the landlord. She had simply disappeared in the middle of the night, leaving behind most of her furniture. "Strange girl," the woman said, her fingers fidgeting with the buttons on her cardigan. always looking out her window at that old house, said it wasn't supposed to be there. I thanked her and walked down to inspect the Victorian house myself. Up close, it seemed even more out of place, a relic stubbornly refusing to fade into the background of modern development. The real estate sign in the overgrown yard was weathered, the agent's name and number barely legible. I called the number, my phone pressed against my ear as I stood on the sidewalk, watching the curtains in an upstairs window flutter slightly despite the lack of breeze. The agent sounded surprised when I inquired about the property. That listing was removed years ago, she said. The house was demolished in 2018 to make way for the apartment complex. A chill ran down my spine despite the afternoon warmth. I turned slowly, looking at the house that stood solidly before me, its shadow stretching across the sidewalk to touch the toes of my shoes. "I'm standing in front of it right now," I said quietly. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "That's not possible," she finally replied. "I attended the demolition myself. There's nothing there but an empty lot waiting for phase 2 of the apartment development." I ended the call and approached the house, my footsteps feeling unusually loud on the cracked walkway. The porch steps creaked under my weight, 1, 2, 3, the third step broken exactly as it had appeared in Sarah's photographs. The front door was unlocked, swinging open at the slightest touch of my fingertips. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of old wood and something else, something sweet and metallic that made my stomach tighten. The entryway opened to a living room with furniture draped in white sheets like pale ghosts frozen in conversation. On the wall hung a single photograph in an ornate frame, a family portrait from what appeared to be the early 1900s, a stern-faced couple standing behind a young girl with solemn eyes. As I moved deeper into the house, I found more photographs on every wall, all featuring the same girl at different ages, her expression never changing. In the dining room, the table was set for one, a single plate covered in a fine layer of dust. It was in the kitchen that I found the notebooks, dozens of them stacked neatly on the counter. Each one contained the same neat handwriting I recognized from Sarah's statement. Each documented a different address, a different sighting of the house, going back not months, but years, decades. The earliest entry was dated 1943. And then I saw it, the small door in the back of the kitchen, partially hidden behind a pantry shelf. It opened to reveal a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. The wood of the handrail was smooth, worn by the passage of countless hands. At the bottom, a single bulb illuminated a small cellar room with walls lined with shelves. On those shelves stood dozens of identical jars, each containing what looked like dark liquid. On a small table in the center of the room lay an open journal, different from the others. The handwriting was older, more formal. The first entry was dated 1894 and signed Eleanor Blackwood. It detailed the creation of what she called a dwelling untethered from place, a house that would follow the bloodline through generations, collecting what was owed. The final pages contained a list of names, each one crossed out except for the last, Sarah Langley. And beneath that, recently added in different handwriting, Detective Michael Harmon. My name. I felt a sudden heaviness in my limbs, a drowsy certainty that I should sit down, just for a moment. As I sank to the floor, my back against the cool stone wall, I heard the front door upstairs close with a decisive click. The house had found its new occupant. In my weakening grip, my phone showed a new text message from an unknown number. "I'm sorry. It follows until it claims. I've moved again, maybe this time." The message was incomplete. Outside, through the small basement window, I could see the apartment complex where Sarah had lived. But the perspective was wrong. The house couldn't be facing the apartments from this angle, unless the house had already moved, already followed. As my consciousness began to fade, I understood what Sarah had discovered. The house didn't simply appear at the end of the street. The house was the end, the final destination for those whose names appeared in a leaner Blackwood's journal. Tomorrow someone would notice I was missing. They would search my office, find the Langley file. Perhaps they would come looking for me. But would they see the house at all? Or would they walk past an empty lot, unaware of what stood there, visible only to its chosen occupant? The light bulb flickered overhead, casting jumping shadows across the rows of dark jars. I now knew what they contained. I knew why the house followed. I knew what it collected. And I knew with absolute certainty that soon there would be one more jar on the shelf. Story 10: The Enigmatic Mask. The quaint costume shop was on the brink of closure, its shelves filled with remnants of time gone by. Amidst the remnants, a woman's gaze fell upon a mask tucked away in a forgotten corner. Its features, delicate yet uncannily lifelike, held a mysterious allure. As she placed it on the checkout counter, the cashier hesitated, a flicker of unease crossing his face. "That's not ours," he murmured cryptically. Perplexed, the woman searched for a tag, only to find none. With a nonchalant shrug, she decided to take it home. That very night, a soft rustle stirred her from slumber, a whisper of fabric shifting. Startled, she scanned the room, her eyes falling upon the mask perched on her nightstand, gazing straight at her. The woman known as Catherine Reed would later be found by her concerned neighbor. The morning light spilled through the slightly ajar door, illuminating the eerie stillness within. What the neighbor stumbled upon was a scene that would perplex investigators for years to come. Catherine lay lifeless on her bedroom floor, the enigmatic mask nowhere to be seen. Detective Morgan arrived at the scene, where the atmosphere was thick with unanswered questions. The shutters clicked softly as forensics worked diligently, capturing every detail with their cameras. "No signs of forced entry," an officer remarked, his pen scratching against paper. The detective's keen eyes scanned the room, noting subtle clues that whispered of a hidden truth. A drawer left slightly ajar. A lipstick-stained water glass on the nightstand. Everything seemed mundane, except for the woman who would never awaken. The medical examiner's somber face revealed little upon initial examination. Cause of death remains elusive. "No visible wounds, no signs of struggle," he intoned, pointing to Catherine's frozen expression of terror. Detective Morgan knelt beside the body, a shiver dancing down her spine. "Something terrified her to the core," she murmured softly. Catherine, an art appraiser known for her meticulous nature, had a knack for spotting authenticity. Colleagues praised her discerning eye, her ability to detect the slightest discrepancies. Could this very talent have led to her untimely demise? Security footage from the costume shop unveiled a puzzling mystery. The cashier's baffled reaction to the mask raised more questions than answers. The shop owner, when consulted, denied any knowledge of the mask's origin. A sense of unease settled upon the detective as she delved deeper into the shop's history. The breakthrough in the case came with the discovery of microscopic fibers embedded in Catherine's fingertips. She was grasping onto something, the lab technician explained, puzzled by the unusual composition of the fibers. They bore traces of human hair intertwined with an unidentified organic substance, defying all attempts at identification. The investigation led to a chilling revelation, a series of similar deaths spanning decades, each victim acquiring a mysterious mask before meeting their demise. The retired detective, privy to one such case, shared a grim truth. Inside each mask, ancient symbols were hidden, hinting at a ritual of soul transference. A journal concealed within Catherine's home shed light on her final days. Her frantic entries spoke of a malevolent presence, of the mask's sinister intent. She had unraveled a dark connection between the masks and the string of inexplicable deaths. "The mask moves," her words echoed, a testament to her growing dread. As the pieces of the puzzle aligned, the cause of Catherine's death was unveiled: cardiac arrest induced by sheer terror. What specter could evoke such paralyzing fear, halting a heart in its rhythm? Surveillance footage from a vigilant neighbor's house unearthed a bone-chilling revelation: a figure donned in a mask, mimicking Catherine's movements with an eerie precision. The hunt for the elusive mask intensified, but it vanished without a trace, only to resurface months later in a distant vintage shop. The mask, a harbinger of doom, slipped through their fingers once more, leaving a trail of unanswered questions in its wake. The detective, haunted by Catherine's journal, kept it close, a grim reminder of a truth too bizarre for conventional understanding. In the stillness of the night, she would awaken, a sense of foreboding lingering in the shadows. She would check her locks, her gaze flickering to the darkness beyond. For the mask, ancient and hungry, continued its macabre dance, seeking its next unwitting host in a timeless cycle of fear and death. Its empty gaze fixed upon the world, waiting patiently to be found once more. And when it surfaced anew, another soul would awaken to the chilling presence in the night, the mask drawing ever closer, a silent predator hungry for the essence that dwelled behind mortal eyes. Story 11. In the quiet stillness of an abandoned house, a phone sat on the dusty kitchen counter, its screen softly glowing as if beckoning for attention. Detective Morgan Reed stood before it, her gaze fixed on the evidence bag containing the mysterious device that had sparked an enigma beyond comprehension. The call had come from this very phone, a call that defied logic and reason. A call made by a voice long gone, a voice belonging to Catherine Sullivan, a woman who had perished in a tragic accident 3 years prior. The call, just 11 seconds of static, breathing, and 5 haunting words: "He's here, he." The house itself held no answers, only whispers of a past long forgotten. It had once belonged to the Sullivans, but now stood empty, a silent witness to a tale shrouded in mystery and sorrow. The doors remained locked, the windows sealed, yet the phone had somehow materialized on the counter, a beacon of the inexplicable. As Detective Reed delved deeper into the enigma, she uncovered a journal hidden among Catherine's old belongings. Its pages told a harrowing story of love turned to control, of fear lurking in the shadows of a once happy relationship. The final entry, a chilling revelation of impending danger, sent shivers down Morgan's spine. Mark Jennings, Catherine's boyfriend at the time of her death, had seemed like an unlikely suspect at first. His alibi had held up, his whereabouts confirmed on the night of the mysterious call. But as the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, a darker truth emerged. Forensic analysis of the buried phone unearthed deleted texts, damning evidence of Mark's sinister intentions. The truth of Catherine's demise slowly came to light, revealing a twisted tale of manipulation and violence, of a man driven by obsession to silence the voice of his victim. In a chilling confrontation, Mark's facade crumbled, his deception laid bare before the relentless pursuit of justice. His elaborate ruse, the ghostly call that had haunted the investigators, was nothing more than a macabre charade to cover his tracks, to sow confusion and doubt in the search for truth. As the trial unfolded, the weight of Catherine's unspoken words filled the courtroom, a ghostly presence guiding the scales of justice to their rightful verdict. Mark's guilt was undeniable, his crimes laid bare for all to see. And as the final gavel fell, a sense of closure washed over the room, a bittersweet victory for those who had sought to uncover the truth. The phone from the abandoned house now lay silent in the evidence locker, a relic of a dark chapter finally closed. In the stillness of the night, whispers of the past lingered, a reminder that even in silence, the echoes of the departed can still be heard. Catherine's voice, once silenced by tragedy, now spoke through the pages of her journal, a testament to the enduring power of truth and justice. And in the darkness, her story lived on, a beacon of hope for those who seek solace in the mysteries of the night. Story 12. The town never spoke of the house nestled at the edge of the woods. It stood solitary, its windows dark, its porch weary from the weight of time. No one laid claim to it, no one could recall its builder. Yet when a cluster of hikers strayed too near, they glimpsed the peculiar site names etched into the wooden walls, carved deep like ominous messages. At the foot of the list, crisp and untouched, was a name none recognized, until a whisper quivered through the group, "That's mine." The call came in under the shroud of night. Dispatch logged it as a routine trespassing incident. The voice at the other end belonged to Mason Wright, the leader of the hikers who stumbled upon his own name carved into the forsaken dwelling. The responding officers anticipated mere teenage mischief, maybe a jest among companions, but what they encountered defied logic. Detective Sarah Keller arrived as twilight enveloped the forest. Her flashlight pierced the darkness, casting light upon the weathered front of the house. The names, 27 in total, stretched vertically down the eastern side. Some had faded with time, nearly vanishing against the aged wood. Others remained sharp, as if freshly inscribed. And at the base, Mason Wright, the incision still smelling faintly of sawdust. "I've never set foot here before," Mason asserted, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "I can't fathom how anyone knew my name." The inquiry commenced with investigations into the backgrounds of each listed name. The findings sent shivers down the spines of the detective team. Every name belonged to a person reported missing over the past 40 years. Some cases had grown cold, others remained active. Yet all shared a chilling similarity: the individuals had vanished while hiking alone. Forensic experts photographed each carving, documenting the varying depths, styles, and weathering. The oldest name, Rebecca Hansen, aligned with a missing persons case from 37 years earlier. The case files recounted a young woman who ventured into those woods and never returned. Search parties uncovered naught but a lone hiking boot by a stream. Detective Keller extensively interrogated Mason. His account remained unwavering. He bore no ties to the area beyond this hiking expedition with 4 college comrades. They had selected the trail at random, guided by an online suggestion. Nothing in his past linked him to any of the other names adorning the wall. The focus of the inquiry shifted to Mason's companions. Emily Chen, the group's photographer, supplied images captured during their trek. Upon scrutiny, analysts detected an unsettling sight: a blurred figure loomed in the background of 3 separate photographs. The silhouette resembled a tall, slender man, always partly obscured by trees. "We never spotted anyone else on the trail," Emily affirmed. "We'd have remembered." Detective Keller commanded a search of the house's interior. The edifice appeared deserted, dust cloaked every surface, furniture lay in disarray. Yet in the cellar, officers stumbled upon a harrowing tableau. Personal effects belonging to the missing hikers were meticulously arranged on wooden shelves. Watches, backpacks, cameras, wallets, each tagged with a corresponding name from the exterior wall. The evidence team worked meticulously, cataloging each item. Beneath ultraviolet light, Blood traces emerged on the concrete floor, stains from years past, efforts made to cleanse them evident. Ground-penetrating radar unveiled no bodies beneath the house, yet cadaver canines signaled persistently at the rear of the property where the forest thickened. As the probe escalated, Detective Keller noted peculiar conduct from Mason Wright. He began reporting eerie incidents, whispers outside his abode, footprints in fresh snow leading to his doorstep but vanishing thereafter, specters observing from the street. The department assigned an officer for his safeguard, yet Mason's paranoia mounted. The breakthrough arrived when researchers exhumed land records from county archives. The house had been owned by a reclusive hunter named Victor Blackwood. Locals seldom cited him, recalling brief encounters with an unsettlingly tall, gaunt man who shunned conversation. Blackwood had vanished without a trace 15 years ago, his disappearance left uninvestigated. Detective Keller secured a warrant to delve deeper into the surrounding forest. The search squad uncovered a network of rudimentary hunting blinds strategically stationed along well-trodden trails. Within one, they stumbled upon a journal detailing meticulous observations, accounts of hikers, their paths, gear, and routines. The script mirrored samples from Victor Blackwood's scant existing records. The journal entries grew increasingly disturbing with time. Initial pages delineated hunting methods for animals. Later entries depicted humans as quarry their behaviors, weaknesses, and strategies for their capture. The final pages recounted intricate narratives of stalking each victim on the wall, including elaborate depictions of target selection. The pursuit for Blackwood mobilized across multiple jurisdictions. Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging scoured the forest. Tactical squads combed every crevice and cavern, yet the suspect remained elusive. Mason Wright ceased answering calls. Officers dispatched to his residence found the entrance unbarred, the rooms vacant. Carved freshly on his bedroom wall, a single line read, "The hunter becomes the hunted." The search for Mason persisted fruitlessly for weeks. Then, during a subsequent sweep of Blackwood's house, forensic technicians unearthed a horrifying revelation. Concealed behind a false partition in the basement, they uncovered a small workshop containing woodworking tools, jars of preservatives, and a freshly carved wooden piece bearing a new name not yet affixed to the exterior wall. Detective Keller recognized the name instantly. It belonged to the chief forensic technician who had processed the house during the initial examination. The technician had called in sick that morning and remained unreachable by phone. Authorities established a constant surveillance perimeter around the house. Cameras monitored every approach. Motion sensors scanned for intrusions. The trap was set. 3 nights later, sensors alerted the team. Security footage captured a figure emerging from the forest, impossibly tall and slender, moving with unnatural grace. The figure strode toward the house directly, seemingly unperturbed by the surveillance. As tactical units closed in, the cameras momentarily lost connection. When the system reconnected, the figure had vanished. To this day, the house endures under ceaseless watch. Mason Wright and the forensic technician were never located. The investigation endures, with fresh resources allocated as similar vanishings are reported in other wooded regions. The names on the wall have become legendary among law enforcers. Some officers refuse to utter them. Others steer clear of the case entirely. And local hikers now steer clear of the house, fearful that mentioning it might somehow add their names to that dreadful list, the names no one utters. Story 13, the worn envelope, its edges tinged with age, held a fresh stamp, a recent journey. The detective unfolded it with care. Inside lay a single sheet of paper, its message typed hastily in an uneven script. "I am sorry for what I did. The paper exuded a faint dampness, carrying a lingering scent of iron. A reddish smear along the bottom edge caught their attention, a stain that was not ink. Detective Sarah Morgan gingerly placed the letter into an evidence bag, her gloved hands deftly preserving the evidence. The forensics team's analysis confirmed her suspicions the reddish mark was human blood, a match to DNA from an unsolved homicide that had haunted the department for years. The victim, a young journalist named Rebecca Warren, had been found in her apartment with fatal stab wounds. Her missing laptop and scattered notes hinted at a connection to the story she was investigating. Despite exhaustive efforts, the case had turned cold until the arrival of this mysterious letter addressed simply to Homicide Division. The scant fingerprints on the paper and envelope hinted at a gloved sender. The postmark provided a long-awaited lead. Morgan gathered her team in the briefing room, surrounded by the haunting images of crime scenes and fruitless leads. Pinning the letter at the center of the board, she declared, "This changes everything. Our killer shows remorse." Detective James Chen, Morgan's longtime partner on the case, eyed the letter thoughtfully. "Or perhaps they wish us to believe so," he offered. "The blood could be a theatrical touch, a cruel taunt." The forensics team traced the unique typewriter impression to a model long out of production, a rare find but not impossible. They expanded their search to antique dealers and collectors in the region. Delving deeper into Rebecca's life, they learned of her relentless pursuit of truth, her latest investigation delving into a wealthy family entangled in local politics. As they revisited suspects, they focused on Rebecca's boyfriend, Michael Barnes. Initially distraught and alibi secure, subtle shifts in his demeanor under scrutiny hinted at hidden truths. Rebecca feared she was being followed, he confessed during a subsequent interview. "I dismissed it as paranoia from her investigation. I should have listened." While following this lead, a second letter arrived, bearing the same typewritten message in fresh blood. This time the confession expanded. She uncovered too much about the family, the inheritance, the old man's fate. "I never intended for it to escalate." The trail led to the mansion of the deceased patriarch, where the eldest son, Richard, possessed a collection of vintage typewriters. His rehearsed explanations raised suspicions. A breakthrough came with microscopic fibers on the envelopes matching stationery exclusive to the youngest daughter, Alina. Confronted, Alina revealed Richard had borrowed her stationery, leading to a search of his home. Hidden within was a trove of incriminating evidence clippings, surveillance, and a typewriter linked to the letters. Blood analysis confirmed it belonged to Rebecca. The unexpected link between Richard and Michael surfaced through financial records, revealing payments prior to the murder. Confronted, Michael confessed, unraveling a sinister plan gone awry. The final revelation came from Alina's secret recording, capturing Richard's damning words. Arrested in a desperate escape attempt, Richard faced trial with a staunch denial, shifting blame to Michael. But the weight of evidence sealed his fate. The jury swiftly returned a guilty verdict. As Richard faced justice, Detective Morgan approached Rebecca's grieving parents in the courtroom. Though no words could erase their loss, closure dawned with the conviction. The blood-stained letters, silent witnesses to a meticulously planned crime, remained in storage, a reminder that even the most cunning schemes leave traces. The tale of Rebecca Warren became a lesson in detective lore, highlighting that crucial breakthroughs often stem from simple relics like an aged typewriter, bearing the burden of a killer's unquiet conscience. Story 14. She crossed the threshold into the abandoned Victorian, dust dancing in the still air around her. The house, frozen in time, whispered secrets through its peeling walls and draped furniture. But amidst the eerie stillness, a mystery lingered. Every door led back to the parlor. No matter the path she took, no matter the handle she turned, she always found herself returning to the same room. The only escape seemed to be the way she entered. Yet as she turned to leave, the front door had vanished into thin air. The discovery of Morgan Pierce's lifeless form shifted the narrative of the Victorian from a mere relic to a haunting crime scene. Detective Sarah Lind stood at the threshold, observing as forensic experts moved silently through the dimness like specters. The house, once known for its unsettling reputation of spinning compasses and watchful gazes, now held secrets more ominous than local folklore. The initial assessment indicates she passed approximately 3 days ago, the medical examiner murmured, barely breaking the silence. Cause of death appears to be asphyxiation. Morgan had been found seated in an antique chair in the parlor, her posture serene, hands folded neatly in her lap, as if awaiting a visitor who never arrived. No signs of struggle, no marks of resistance. The scene exuded a chilling tranquility that sent shivers down the spines of seasoned investigators. "Who discovered the body?" Lind inquired, her voice soft in the heavy atmosphere. "A real estate agent showing the property to potential buyers," her partner replied. "They stumbled upon her, seated there, mistaking her for a trespasser until they drew closer." The Victorian had stood empty since the passing of its previous owner, Eleanor Blackwood, nearly half a decade earlier. Legal disputes had left it abandoned, unwanted, forgotten except by those seeking thrills or trouble. Morgan Pierce, a 26-year-old graduate student delving into architectural anomalies for her thesis, had a fascination with spaces that defied norms. Her friends portrayed her as meticulous, driven, drawn to places that challenged conventional understanding. The allure of the enigmatic Victorian, with its reputation for disorienting visitors, was irresistible to her curious mind. Her roommate reported her missing 2 days prior, Lind noted, scanning through her notes. Morgan spoke of visiting the house where people get lost for her research. The investigation unveiled Morgan's repeated visits to the house leading up to her demise. Her journal entries chronicled peculiar acoustics, sudden cold patches, and doors that seemingly led to different rooms with each opening. In her final notes, she mentioned bringing specialized equipment to document what she termed spatial anomalies, equipment now missing without a trace. During the autopsy, an unexpected revelation emerged: traces of a rare alkaloid in Morgan's system, derived from a plant linked to shamanic practices. Though known to induce disorientation and vivid illusions, the quantities found were insufficient to be fatal. She wasn't one to dabble in recreational substances, her boyfriend asserted during interrogation. Morgan was meticulous in her research. She wouldn't have jeopardized her perception intentionally. Deleted fragments of messages on Morgan's phone, recovered through digital scrutiny, revealed conversations with an individual sharing her intrigue for the house, someone claiming insight into its mysteries. The exchanges grew progressively intimate and enigmatic. "The house remembers its past," one message hinted. "It seeks acknowledgement." The investigation led Lind and her team to Adam Reeves, an architectural historian engaged in discussions with Morgan. His knowledge of rare spatial phenomena had captivated her, and their professional rapport had evolved into a deeper connection. Reeves, though grief-stricken by Morgan's untimely passing, maintained his innocence. "The house carries a reputation," he confessed. "The original architect wove optical illusions and false perspectives into its design, intending to bewilder and confuse. Morgan believed there was a deeper layer to it, something beyond mere tricks of construction." Yet Reeves possessed an alibi, supported by security footage, placing him miles away at a scholarly gathering at the estimated time of Morgan's death. A breakthrough surfaced from an unexpected source: the grandson of Eleanor Blackwood, now residing overseas. When contacted by investigators, he unearthed a buried family secret. "My grandmother wasn't the sole Blackwood to perish within those walls," he disclosed. Others met their end in the parlor, always in repose, as if beckoned by a force we termed the claiming. He shared journals spanning generations, detailing deaths initially attributed to natural causes. The pattern was unmistakable. Those who spent prolonged periods in a house eventually succumbed to what the family cryptically labeled the influence. A secondary sweep of the premises unveiled a concealed compartment behind the parlor hearth. Within, investigators stumbled upon Morgan's missing gear and something more. An alcove held artifacts from diverse indigenous cultures, arranged meticulously in a geometric formation. At its center sat a weathered figurine, embodying a deity associated with liminal realms' thresholds between worlds. Traces of the alkaloid detected in Morgan's system were found on these relics. The narrative took a darker turn as forensic analysis of dust patterns suggested an unidentified presence within the house at the time of Morgan's passing. Partial fingerprints, unrelated to Morgan or acknowledged visitors, were retrieved from doorknobs throughout the residence. 3 weeks into the inquiry, Adam Reeves was discovered lifeless in his residence. Like Morgan, he sat poised towards the entrance, an aura of peace enveloping him, the same alkaloid present in his system. Clenched in his hand was a key unmatched by any lock in his abode, but fitting seamlessly into the concealed alcove within the Victorian. In a final missive, sent to himself as a testament, Reeves inscribed, "The house doesn't imprison you physically, it ensnares your perception." Morgan was correct. The doors led where they always have, but something distorts your sense of direction. Once you grasp the truth, departure is within reach, yet by then, leaving seems inconceivable. The case remains open, labeled as questionable deaths under scrutiny. The Victorian, now condemned, stands off limits under official directive, yet murmurs persist of flickering lights glimpsed within on certain nights and of guests who enter but never depart. Some locals assert the house seizes those who delve too deeply into its enigmas. Others suggest Morgan and Reeves unearthed a force ancient and potent, residing within the crevices of reality. The verity remains as elusive as an exit in a domicile where all paths lead back to the origin. Story 15. The ancient library faced destruction, its fate sealed by the relentless march of progress. The workers toiled tirelessly, dismantling the structure brick by brick. Yet as fate would have it, a solitary worker stumbled upon a hidden secret, a concealed latch nestled within the shadows of a weathered bookshelf. With a gentle click, the bookshelf swung open, unveiling a passage shrouded in darkness, beckoning with a mysterious allure. The air within the hidden room was heavy, stagnant with the weight of time, untouched by human hands for decades. In the dim light filtering through the narrow passage, there stood a solitary chair, its presence ominous, bolted firmly to the cold stone floor. Upon the walls, etched in desperation and defiance, a haunting message repeated itself like a whispered plea, "I am still here." The construction foreman, sensing an unsettling presence, urgently summoned the authorities. What had begun as a routine demolition now unfolded into a chilling enigma that gripped the very essence of the old library. Detective Morgan Walsh, a seasoned investigator with decades of experience, entered the hidden room, his flashlight piercing the darkness like a solitary beacon in the night. "Secure the area," Walsh commanded, his voice resonating through the chamber, a solemn echo in the eerie silence. "No one disturbs a single thing until forensics arrives." The history of the library cast a shadow of intrigue over the unfolding mystery. Once owned by the illustrious Harrington family, the building held dark secrets within its walls. The disappearance of their daughter, Rebecca, had cast a pall over the family, leaving unanswered questions and lingering doubts in its wake. As forensic experts meticulously combed through the hidden room, they unearthed fragments of a grim past hair and fibers embedded in the aged chair, traces of blood and skin cells mingling with the dust on the scratched walls. The room whispered tales of captivity and struggle, of a presence long forgotten yet hauntingly present. Walsh delved into the depths of the Harrington family saga, unraveling threads of deceit and betrayal woven into the fabric of their legacy. A chilling revelation emerged: the timing of the library's donation to the public coincided eerily with Rebecca's disappearance, a sinister connection that sent shivers down Walsh's spine. Further investigation unearthed a disturbing truth: the very bookshelf concealing the hidden room had been installed by a contractor closely tied to Maxwell Harrington, Rebecca's uncle, and a figure of authority within the family. Dark secrets lurked beneath the polished veneer of respectability, waiting to be exposed. The forensic puzzle pieces fell into place, painting a macabre picture of deception and tragedy. The DNA evidence from the hidden room matched Rebecca's own, sealing her fate within the confines of the library walls. She had not run away. She had been ensnared in a web of treachery spun by those she once trusted. With a warrant in hand, detectives descended upon the Harrington estate, unearthing a damning journal hidden within Maxwell's study, a testament to his twisted obsession and the depths of his depravity. The final entry bore witness to a chilling resolve, sealing Rebecca's tragic destiny in ink-stained pages. Confronted with irrefutable evidence, Maxwell's facade crumbled, revealing a heart consumed by darkness and deceit. His confession, devoid of remorse, laid bare the horrors that had transpired in the hidden room: the imprisonment, the struggle, and the ultimate betrayal that had silenced Rebecca forever. Beneath the floor of the hidden room, the earth yielded its grim secrets, a skeletal remnant of a life cut short, a soul silenced by greed and malice. Maxwell's stoic admission brought closure, yet the wounds of the past ran deep, a scar on the soul of a grieving family. As justice prevailed and the truth came to light, the library stood as a solemn monument to a life extinguished too soon. Community members, touched by the tragedy that had unfolded within its walls, paid their respects with floral tributes, honoring a memory that refused to fade into obscurity. In the quiet aftermath, a poignant truth lingered in the air, the message etched on the walls, a silent testament to a life unjustly taken. "I am still here," it whispered, a haunting echo of a soul yearning to be remembered, to be vindicated in the annals of history. And in that whispered plea, justice found its voice, resounding through the corridors of time. Story 16: The Enigmatic Coffee Shop. The quaint coffee shop had been a sanctuary for him, a place of solace amidst the chaos of the world. Every day he would occupy the same table, order the same black coffee, and immerse himself in the comforting silence that enveloped him. The barista recognized his face, a familiar presence in the bustling cafe, yet his name remained a mystery to all. Then one fateful day, he failed to make his usual appearance. Concerned, the police investigated his customary seat, only to discover a forgotten wallet left behind. Within its confines lay a driver's license bearing a face without a name, an address, or any identifying details, just an eerie void where his identity should have resided. Detective Sarah Mercer, a woman of unwavering determination, delved into the perplexing case. The enigmatic figure, now dubbed John Doe in the official records, had left a puzzling trail behind him. Reviewing the security footage with furrowed brows, Mercer observed the ordinary man's every movement within the coffee shop. John entered, ordered his usual beverage, and settled at his secluded corner table, hidden slightly by a lush plant. With a worn leather messenger bag by his side, he engaged in a ritualistic routine of sipping coffee, gazing out the window, and scribbling in a weathered notebook. And then the inexplicable occurred. John stood, walked towards the restroom, and simply vanished into thin air, never to return to his seat or exit through any visible door. A phantom in the bustling cafe, a mystery that defied all logical explanation. Puzzled and intrigued, Mercer instructed the tech specialist to scrutinize every angle of the footage. But there was no trace of John entering any restroom. He had seemingly evaporated into the ether without a trace. Back at the precinct, Mercer meticulously examined the contents of the abandoned wallet. A haunting emptiness pervaded the personal artifacts within blank spaces where a name should be, credit cards devoid of identity, and currency neatly arranged without a rightful owner. Among the sparse possessions was a lone business card, bearing only a cryptic phone number that led to an eerie silence when dialed. The puzzle deepened, shrouded in a cloak of enigma that seemed to defy the laws of reality. The barista, a witness to John's silent presence over the years, offered scant insights into the elusive figure. He was a man of few words, always alone, engrossed in his writings within the mysterious notebook that confounded even the most skilled cryptographers. Pages filled with coded text and enigmatic sketches of unfamiliar structures hinted at a world beyond comprehension. Mercer's investigation led her to discover peculiar anomalies in the security footage, a flicker in time each morning as John entered the coffee shop, a subtle tremor in the fabric of reality. Returning to the coffee shop, Mercer's gaze fell upon an ancient mirror that hung between the entrance and the restroom hallway. Its ornate frame bore symbols reminiscent of those within John's notebook, hinting at a deeper connection to the enigma that surrounded him. Upon questioning the shop owner, a revelation emerged. The mirror had stood witness to the passage of time, unmoved and unaltered for generations. And yet, beneath its reflective surface, a hidden chamber concealed a trove of identical wallets, each a vessel of lost identity. Within the hidden enclave, a journal chronicled decades of experiments in temporal displacement and identity manipulation, bearing the same handwriting as John's notebook. An unsettling entry forewarned of encroaching dangers and a closing window of opportunity. As whispers of spectral sightings and eerie phenomena swirled around the coffee shop, Mercer encountered Margaret Keller, a former physicist with knowledge of John Doe's true identity. Daniel Weston, a brilliant mind lost to an experiment in quantum mirrors, had sought to breach the boundaries between realities. The coffee shop, built upon the remnants of Weston's vanished laboratory, served as a nexus of intersecting worlds, a place where the veil between dimensions grew thin. Mercer's understanding deepened as she unearthed the hidden truths behind the facade of normalcy. In a moment of revelation, Mercer beheld the mirror's shattered fragments, a testament to the experiment's completion and the closure of the elusive window. John Doe, Daniel Weston, a man of mysteries and paradoxes, had traversed the boundaries of existence, leaving behind a legacy of unanswered questions and spectral echoes. The case of the man who defied conventional wisdom remains a haunting enigma, shrouded in the mists of the unknown. The coffee shop, a haven of secrets and revelations, closed its doors, yielding to the inexorable march of time. And yet, whispers linger of spectral reflections and hidden truths, echoing through the corridors of memory and imagination. Story 17, the Polaroid lay nestled among memories of bygone days, a relic of a birthday celebration long faded into the whispers of time. Faces frozen in time, smiles painted with innocence, and candles dancing with flickering flames, nothing out of the ordinary at first glance. But when Sarah Winters inherited the dusty box of nostalgia from her mother's attic, a chilling discovery awaited her curious eyes. Amongst the snapshots of joy and laughter, a sinister presence lurked in the shadows of the past, unnoticed and uninvited. A man, a mere silhouette in the background of every photo, stood on the periphery of the family's happiness, his identity a mystery shrouded in darkness. The journey into the unknown began as Sarah delved into the contents of the cardboard box labeled Memories. What should have been a comforting journey down memory lane soon twisted into a harrowing nightmare. The first photo revealed a faint outline of the mysterious figure, a mere whisper of a presence during Sarah's 7th birthday party. Subsequent images unveiled a chilling progression, the man inching closer and closer with each snapshot, his form becoming clearer as he ventured from the shadows into the light. With trembling hands, Sarah reached out to her father, seeking answers to the enigma that haunted the frames of her childhood. His initial disbelief gave way to a stunned silence, a sharp intake of breath betraying the gravity of the situation. As digital reproductions of the Polaroids illuminated the haunting truth, a sense of unease settled over them both, a silent acknowledgement of the inexplicable. In a dimly lit precinct, Detective Marcus Reed studied the haunting photographs laid out before him, the patter of rain against the windows adding a rhythmic backdrop to the unfolding mystery. With a keen eye, he traced the phantom figure's progression through the family gatherings, each image a breadcrumb leading deeper into the heart of darkness that had gripped Sarah's past. The detective's inquiries yielded no recognition of the mysterious man, his presence a ghostly anomaly in the fabric of time captured on film. As the investigation unfolded, a chilling revelation emerged from the depths of the past. Enhanced images unveiled details long hidden: a scar, a ring, a glimpse of a face previously obscured by the veil of shadows. The pieces of the puzzle began to align as dental records connected the phantom figure to a long-forgotten name: Robert Keller, a maintenance worker with a sinister past intertwined with vanished children and unsolved mysteries. The trail of shadows led to a grim discovery beneath the concrete foundations of Keller's former abode, relics of lost innocence buried in darkness. A hair clip, a toy car, a bracelet, all fragments of shattered lives intertwined with the phantom figure's malevolent presence. The truth, though chilling, brought a semblance of closure to families long haunted by the specter of the unknown. Alone in her apartment, Sarah faced the ghosts of the past, the weight of decades-old secrets pressing down upon her. The detective's call brought news of a bittersweet resolution, a sense of justice tempered by the bitter taste of loss. As she gazed at the final birthday photo, the figure loomed in the background, a silent witness to the horrors that had unfolded unnoticed. The shadows of the past had been unveiled, their secrets laid bare in the harsh light of truth. The box of memories became a repository of darkness, a testament to the unseen threats that linger in the corners of celebration, their presence a chilling reminder of the fragility of innocence. As Sarah closed the lid on the haunting past, a sense of closure mingled with the echoes of a nightmare finally put to rest. The hidden figures that moved through the frozen moments of time had been unmasked, their legacy of fear and sorrow laid to rest in the annals of history. Story 18. The new owners of the house viewed it as a peculiarity, the crackling of the old intercom system late at night, a relic from a bygone era, rewired but left in oblivion. Then one evening the husband, driven by curiosity, pressed the button. A hushed whisper crackled through the speaker. "Why have you returned?" Startled, he recoiled, hands trembling. His wife, standing behind him, murmured, "I never uttered those words." The Victorian manor stood nestled amidst ancient oak trees, its aged facade concealing a modernized interior. Daniel and Meredith Parker had acquired the property at a surprisingly affordable price, despite the uneasy demeanor of the real estate agent during the viewing. The intercom system, an antique feature linking all rooms, had intrigued the couple, both lovers of history. Detective Sarah Reeves arrived at the house, gravel crunching under the tires of her unmarked car. The call had been about a potential break-in, but something in the dispatcher's tone hinted at a deeper story. Daniel Parker, tall and pale, met her at the door, guiding Detective Reeves through the grand entrance hall. "It all began with the intercom," he recounted, as static gave way to whispers and then coherent sentences. "My wife thought I was imagining things until she heard it too." In the living room, Meredith sat stiffly on an antique sofa, hands clasping a steaming mug left untouched. "We found something hidden behind the wall," she stated abruptly. Daniel wanted to expand the kitchen pantry, and when he removed the drywall, her voice faltered. Concealed behind the wall, wrapped in decaying plastic, was a small leather-bound journal. Detective Reeves donned gloves before delicately flipping through its fragile pages. The elegant yet frantic handwriting belonged to a woman named Alina, the presumed former owner. Her entries hinted at a growing suspicion that her husband, Vincent, intended to harm her. The last entry was 30 years ago, Daniel clarified. After that, silence. The previous owners mentioned buying it from an elderly man who relocated to a retirement community. The investigation revealed that Vincent and Alina Blackwood had indeed lived in the house. Records showed Vincent sold the property shortly after Alina supposedly left him. No divorce papers existed. No change of address, no financial transactions in Alina's name post the final journal entry. Detective Reeves mobilized a team to thoroughly search the property. Ground-penetrating radar unveiled anomalies beneath the concrete foundation of the garden shed. As the investigators broke through the aged concrete, the truth emerged in the form of human remains. Forensic analysis confirmed the skeleton belonged to a woman in her 40s, with signs of blunt force trauma to the skull. Among the remains was a gold wedding band engraved with "To Alina, my eternal love." The case against Vincent Blackwood swiftly took shape. Now elderly and residing in a care facility, he comprehended the charges brought against him. His response, when faced with the evidence, sent shivers down the detective's spine. "She wouldn't cease her chatter," Vincent stated, his voice eerily composed. "Always talking through that cursed intercom, monitoring me, doubting me. I disconnected it, but she rewired it herself. Claimed she wanted to always be able to reach me, regardless of where I was in the house." His vacant eyes met theirs. "I only craved silence." During his admission, Vincent disclosed how he meticulously crafted the narrative of Alina deserting him, even sending forged postcards to neighbors from different locations. He had resided in the house for years, walking daily over the spot where his wife lay buried. The trial was succinct, with Vincent pleading guilty to murder. The judge, noting the premeditated nature of the crime and the decades of deceit, delivered the sentence. Daniel and Meredith eventually sold the house, unable to stay after uncovering its grim past. Before departing, they held a memorial for Alina in the restored garden following the investigation. The intercom system was removed during renovations by the subsequent owners. Workers reported hearing static and whispers during the removal process, attributing it to interference from their tools. Detective Reeves revisited the Blackwood case file before it was archived. As she sealed the manila folder, she pondered how the house had seemingly transcended time to unveil its secret. The judicial system had finally caught up with Vincent Blackwood, all thanks to Alina finding a way to have her voice heard. Among local law enforcement, the case became known as the house that echoed back. Detective Reeves occasionally passed by the property on her way home. She never halted, but she would slow down, window cracked open slightly, listening for whispers carried by the breeze. Story 19. In the stillness of the night, the wooden plank yielded beneath her weight, betraying a secret that had long been concealed. A subtle shift, a whisper of sound that beckoned her curiosity. Sarah Coleman knelt down, her fingertips tracing the jagged edges of the floorboard. The hushed creak of old wood echoed in the silence as she peeled back the layers, unveiling a hidden realm below her new abode. A darkness thick and suffocating greeted her probing gaze. Dust danced in the air, clinging to cobwebs like whispers of forgotten tales. But amidst the shadows, shapes began to materialize: a mattress, a chair, and nestled in the corner, a weathered notebook. Her name, scrawled across its pages in a frenzy of repetition, stared back at her, a haunting reflection of her own existence. Detective Morgan Reed loomed behind Sarah, a silent sentinel in the realm of secrets. The dread etched on Sarah's features transcended mere surprise. It delved into the realm of violated sanctuary, of a sinister presence infiltrating what should have been a sanctuary of new beginnings. "Touch nothing," Detective Reed's voice, a tranquil command in the midst of turmoil, pierced the heavy air. Her flashlight cast a beam of light, revealing a gallery of surveillance, a shrine to obsession. Photographs adorned the walls, capturing Sarah's every move, every breath, every heartbeat. A chilling realization dawned upon her: she had been watched, studied, and coveted by unseen eyes. The cottage, a quaint refuge purchased from the estate of a recluse named Walter Green, held within its walls a legacy of shadows. The echoes of a solitary existence resonated through time, weaving a tapestry of dread around Sarah's life. The whispers of the past had failed to warn her of the lurking malevolence that lay hidden beneath the floorboards. As crime scene investigators descended upon the scene, their presence a solemn dirge to the truth that lay buried, the chamber yielded its secrets to forensic scrutiny. Fingerprints, a ghostly testament to Walter's obsession, painted a portrait of a man consumed by a fixation that transcended mortality. The investigation unraveled a tapestry of horror woven from threads of delusion and desire. Walter Green, a man with a history of unrequited infatuation, had fixated on Sarah with a fervor that bordered on madness. His meticulous preparations, his clandestine shrine, all pointed to a chilling conclusion, an intent to claim her as his own. Through the labyrinthine corridors of Walter's past, Detective Reed navigated the treacherous waters of obsession. A former co-worker's hesitant confession unveiled a trail of breadcrumbs leading to a storage unit, a vault of echoes from Sarah's past life, replicated with eerie precision. The mannequin, a lifeless effigy of Sarah herself, sat sentinel in the replica of her former abode, a macabre testament to Walter's twisted affection. The calendar, its date circled in scarlet, whispered of a dark design, a fate entwined with Sarah's, a destiny forged in the shadows of a broken mind. Psychological evaluations painted a portrait of Walter's descent into madness, his delusions spiraling into a web of deceit and desire. The abyss of his obsession threatened to consume Sarah, to ensnare her within its dark embrace. Only fate's intervention had spared her from a fate worse than death. As Sarah bid farewell to the haunted abode, the specter of Walter's legacy lingered in the recesses of her mind. The tendrils of fear gripped her heart, urging her to flee, to seek solace in the unknown expanse of a world untainted by shadows. The cottage, a silent witness to a tale of horror, passed into the hands of unknowing souls, its secrets buried beneath layers of fresh paint and false promises. Life moved on, a river flowing inexorably towards an uncertain horizon, carrying with it the echoes of a past best left forgotten. But for Sarah, the memory of the hidden chamber, of the darkness that lurked beneath the floorboards, remained etched in her soul, a reminder of the fragility of safety, the ephemeral nature of peace, and the chilling truth that monsters, in their final hour, often remain unseen, their legacy a whispered warning to those who dare to listen. Story 20. The tale began innocently enough for Michael and Sarah Klein, the new inhabitants of a Victorian-era home that whispered secrets of a bygone era. Nestled within its walls lay a mystery waiting to be unraveled, hidden beneath what seemed like mere peeling wallpaper. As the couple embarked on the journey of uncovering the house's secrets, a simple water stain in the master bedroom led them down a winding path of discovery. With each layer they peeled back, the past unfurled before their eyes, revealing more than just outdated patterns and faded colors. Beneath the surface of time, they stumbled upon a name Alina Winters scrawled in ink, hauntingly repeated across the wall in a frenzy of desperation. It was a name unfamiliar to them, absent from any records or documents associated with the house. Intrigued and unsettled by this enigma, Sarah and Michael delved deeper into the shadows of the past. Their search led them to an online revelation, a missing persons case from decades ago, featuring a woman whose resemblance to the previous homeowner, Margaret Cavendish, was uncanny. The threads of coincidence and mystery intertwined as the couple's curiosity transformed into an all-consuming obsession. Nights turned into days spent piecing together the puzzle of Alina Winters and her connection to the enigmatic Margaret Cavendish. Through relentless investigation and unforeseen twists, a chilling truth began to emerge. The walls of the house held more than just memories, they bore witness to a fractured mind, a tale of identity theft and tragic obsession. As the layers of deception were peeled away, a startling revelation surfaced. The name on the wall, Alina Winters, was not just a remnant of the past, but a key to unlocking a dark secret that had long been buried. Forensic teams descended upon the property, unearthing long-buried truths hidden beneath the facade of normalcy. The house, once a sanctuary of Victorian charm, now stood as a silent witness to a crime that spanned decades. Alina Winters, long thought lost to the shadows of time, found her voice through the walls that bore her name. And in the echoes of the past, justice was finally served, bringing closure to a chapter that had remained unresolved for too long. As the sun set on the horizon, casting long shadows over the now infamous house, Michael and Sarah stood in silent contemplation. The whispers of the past had finally been silenced, leaving behind a legacy etched into the very fabric of the walls, a reminder of the dark secrets that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most charming facades. And as the night enveloped them in its embrace, a sense of peace descended, lulling them into a dream-filled slumber where mysteries and memories danced in the realm of dreams. Story 21. In the hush of early morning, a mysterious package materialized on Sarah Miller's doorstep. No return label, no tracking number, just a weathered cardboard box kissed by the dew of dawn. It was not meant for her. The name inscribed was foreign to her ears. She hesitated, a moment of fleeting uncertainty, before yielding to the siren call of curiosity. With delicate hands, she unraveled the tape sealing the box, anticipating the mundane contents within. Yet what she found nestled inside was anything but ordinary alone VHS tape, accompanied by a simple directive on a sticky note: watch alone. Sarah found herself transfixed by the enigmatic object in her grasp. The weight of it felt ominous, as if it carried the burden of forbidden knowledge. Her fingers lingered over the worn edges, tracing the imperfections etched in the plastic casing. The note, bearing the fervent strokes of an unknown hand, seemed to pulse with urgency, a silent plea for attention. As the suburban world outside hummed with its usual rhythm, a distant dog's bark, the laughter of children at play, the drone of a lawnmower, Sarah brought the enigmatic package into her home, setting it down on the kitchen counter. Doubt gnawed at her resolve. The name Daniel Whitaker held no significance in her life. She had dwelled in her home for years, never encountering a trace of this elusive figure. Curiosity and unease danced a delicate waltz in her mind as her gaze flitted towards the dusty VCR, a relic of nostalgia. Against the warnings whispered by her intuition, Sarah succumbed to the pull of the unknown and inserted the tape. Static crackled on the screen before sharpening into focus, revealing a dimly lit room bathed in shadows. A lone figure sat in a wooden chair, his features initially obscured. "My name is Daniel Whitaker," his voice, a solemn whisper, filled the room. "If you're watching this, someone found you, which means they'll find me too." With each revelation, the man leaned closer to the camera, unveiling a visage etched with exhaustion and vigilance. His tale unfolded a narrative of innocence shrouded in deceit. "I didn't kill her," he confessed, desperation lacing his words, "but they will say otherwise. Planted evidence, fabricated truths. My existence intertwined with a tragedy I never foresaw." Detective Eliza Ramirez, a guardian of justice, found herself ensnared in a web of enigmas as identical tapes bearing Whitaker's haunting message surfaced. A murder, a suspect vanished into thin air, and a truth veiled in shadows. The investigation spiraled into the realm of corporate malfeasance when the whistleblower, Catherine Walsh, emerged as a pivotal piece of the puzzle, an audacious soul poised to expose the dark underbelly of PharmaCorp. Ramirez navigated a labyrinth of deception, uncovering threads of conspiracy woven through the fabric of society. The pieces fell into place, revealing a sinister plot to silence the voices of truth. Sarah Miller, an unwitting bystander thrust into the heart of the storm, received a second parcel, a trove of incriminating evidence that laid bare the corruption festering within PharmaCorp's walls. As the tendrils of truth tightened their grip, Whitaker's breadcrumb trail led to a revelation that would shake the foundations of power. In a nondescript storage unit, justice awaited its moment of reckoning. The machinations of a malevolent hand were exposed, the wheels of justice set into motion. In the aftermath, as the shadows of conspiracy dispersed, Sarah stood face to face with the enigmatic figure of Daniel Whitaker. A question lingered in the air, a query born of perplexity and wonder. "Why me?" she ventured, seeking solace in the enigma of fate. His gaze, weathered by trials untold, met hers with a gaze of quiet resolve. "The algorithm chose you," he murmured, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. A beacon of impartiality amidst a sea of deception, a vessel for the truth to find its voice. In the tranquil embrace of twilight, Sarah and Whitaker stood as witnesses to the fragile dance between truth and illusion. The wrong address, a serendipitous twist of fate, had unraveled a tapestry of deceit, unveiling a truth that transcended the boundaries of time and space. The VHS tapes, artifacts of a bygone era, stood as silent sentinels of a saga that had unfolded in the shadows. In the quietude of night, they whispered a lullaby of mystery and revelation, beckoning the weary souls of the world to embrace the enigma of the unknown, for therein lay the seeds of awakening. Story 22. The aged apartment held its secrets, pipes groaned, floorboards whispered secrets. Yet the new tenant sensed a difference in the sounds she heard. The footsteps, too precise, too intentional. They echoed from above, deliberate and slow, but she dwelled on the top floor. One evening she mustered the courage to tap the ceiling with a broomstick. The sound ceased. Silence enveloped the space. Then a lone knock reverberated from within the ceiling. Sarah Coleman kept the knocking incident to herself. She convinced her mind it was merely the building settling, or perhaps a small creature finding shelter in the attic. Despite the nightly footsteps persisting, she adapted, raising the volume of her television, donning headphones to sleep, anything to muffle the rhythmic footfalls wandering her ceiling in the darkness. Detective Morris stumbled upon the apartment tail when a maintenance worker unearthed a hidden crawl space during routine fixes. Removing a section of drywall in the hallway outside Sarah's abode to mend a leak, the worker stumbled upon a narrow passage unaccounted for in the building plans. Illuminated by his flashlight, the space revealed a makeshift dwelling, scattered food wrappers, abandoned water bottles, a stained blanket, and a small journal. The building manager promptly alerted the authorities. Detective Morris, accompanied by his partner Detective Rivera, arrived to find the maintenance worker pallid and trembling. "Someone dwelt within the walls," he repeated. "Someone observed." The journal held meticulous observations of Sarah Coleman, her routine, her guests, her meals, her entertainment choices, even her bathing and sleeping times. Neat handwriting deteriorated into erratic scribbles towards the end, with strange symbols adorning the margins. "The subject no longer acknowledges my presence," the final entry read. "She has chosen to ignore me. No one ignores me." Forensic teams combed the crawl space, uncovering unidentified fingerprints. Intricate passages within the walls and ceilings, some dating back decades, were discovered, connecting to 5 different apartments but culminating in viewing points concealed as fixtures or minor damages in only one, Sarah Coleman's. Current residents reported no anomalies beyond typical apartment noises, while previous tenants shared accounts of feeling watched or hearing unexplained movements. One tenant departed after a mere fortnight, all hesitant to voice their experiences, fearing sounding paranoid. The case took a turn when forensic analysis unveiled minuscule blood spatters in a crawl space. DNA testing traced it to Martin Weaver, a former tenant who had vanished 4 years prior. Martin had resided directly below Sarah's apartment. Investigating Martin's disappearance afresh, Detective Morris learned of Martin's complaints about noises from the apartment above occupied by a reserved individual named Edward. Following a confrontation with Edward, Martin vanished, and Edward vacated the following month without a trace. Edward's history revealed a recurrent pattern, living in top-floor units, minimal social ties, and abrupt departures. A neighbor recalled him as intense, who frequently lamented the need for silence. Property records led investigators to a remote cabin owned by Edward, adorned with photos and notes, including images of former residents like Sarah Coleman and Martin Weaver. Maps detailing building structures, journals noting specimen observations and habitat maintenance, and a corkboard displaying missing persons reports of 6 former apartment residents connected to Edward painted a chilling picture. Beneath the board, evident drag marks hinted at sinister activities. Cadaver dogs led investigators to disturbed earth behind the cabin, unearthing human remains. As forensics identified the victims, Detective Morris revisited Sarah's apartment building. Though sealed, residents reported sporadic noises. During security system installations, a notebook was found tucked in a corner, a recent addition. The first page ominously read, "They discovered my old refuge, but not my new one." Matching the previous notebook, the final page depicted Sarah's apartment layout, a new passage marked in red, and a date for that night. Officers hurried to evacuate Sarah, only to find her dwelling deserted. Her phone rested on the kitchen counter. The television hummed softly. In the bathroom, a message etched in the steamed-up mirror caught their attention. "Look up." The ceiling panel above the shower had been removed. The manhunt for Edward, identified as Edward Mercer, a former construction worker skilled in renovations, commenced. Thermal scans indicated no current occupancy within the walls of Sarah's building. Sarah Coleman's whereabouts remained unknown, her case linked to vanishing incidents across multiple states. Detective Morris, haunted not by the graves or journals but by the visions of an unsuspecting Sarah, listened to those footsteps above her in an apartment devoid of an upper neighbor. The footsteps that answered her knock and reciprocated. Sometimes in the solitude of his abode, Detective Morris gazes at his ceiling, attuned to the sounds, waiting, pondering who else might be listening in the shadows. Story 23. The ancient box lay hidden beneath layers of clutter in the attic, a forgotten treasure of the house's past inhabitants. Among the dusty relics were faded Polaroids capturing moments of joy and togetherness, normal snapshots of family gatherings and celebrations. But as she reached the final photograph, a sense of unease crept over her. In the picture, taken in her very own living room, a family sat on the familiar couch, framed by the same curtains, yet these faces were strangers to her. And there, lurking in the shadows of the hallway, a figure watched surreptitiously. Rebecca shivered as she scrutinized the image, her fingers trembling, causing the edges of the photo to quiver. The family in the picture, a woman with golden locks, a man with thick spectacles, and two children beamed at the camera, unaware of the ominous presence just beyond their sight. Frozen in a moment of bliss, they remained oblivious to the lurking danger nearby. Descending the creaking wooden stairs, Rebecca felt the weight of the house pressing down on her. The once spacious rooms now felt suffocatingly empty since she had moved in 4 months ago. Placing the photograph on her kitchen counter, she studied it under the harsh fluorescent light. The similarities between her home and the scene in the picture were uncanny. The archway leading to the hallway, the unique crown molding, the bay window welcoming the morning sun. This was undeniably her house, yet these faces belonged to a family she had never known. Detective Morgan arrived, clad in a worn leather jacket that bore witness to countless investigations. His sharp eyes missed nothing as he examined the photograph with a methodical gaze. Running a gloved finger along the edge of the Polaroid, he flipped it over, revealing a blank back. "What do you know about the previous owners, the Nelsons?" he inquired in a deep, rumbling voice. Rebecca confessed, "Very little. They had already relocated out of state when I bought the house through a realtor." Nodding thoughtfully, Morgan requested, "May I borrow this? Our team might be able to identify the family in the photo." The investigation unfolded quietly. Rebecca delved into the history of the house, discovering that the Nelsons had acquired it from a family named Crawford, who had abruptly left after 7 years. Prior to them, the Mornos had resided there for nearly a decade. Detective Morgan meticulously traced the lineage of past residents through property records, interviews with former neighbors, and a timeline of occupants. A breakthrough emerged unexpectedly when a former mail carrier identified the family in the photo as the Sutherlands, who had vanished without a trace after a year in the house. Forensic analysis dated the Polaroid approximately 15 years back, unveiling subtle clues within the image, a peculiar pattern of dust particles suspended in the air, the eerie stillness of the subjects. This was a timed photograph, the technician revealed, each person positioned perfectly, indicating someone set up the camera and quickly joined the frame. Yet, if the Sutherlands had orchestrated the photo, who was the mysterious figure in the hallway? Enhanced imaging disclosed more details about the shadowy observer, tall, male, clad in dark attire. His obscured face hinted at a watchful presence, as though he belonged within those walls, as though he held a rightful place in that house. Detective Morgan uncovered a haunting pattern. Families preceding the Sutherlands had all disappeared after exactly 1 year of residency. 5 families vanishing without a trace over a span of 5 years. Rebecca, residing in the house for only 4 months, found herself entwined in a web of mystery and dread. Delving deeper, the investigation unearthed historical building records, revealing the original architect's untimely disappearance during construction. His replacement, Samuel Whitfield, a slender man with haunting eyes, had completed the project. Despite reports of Whitfield's demise in a construction accident, a striking resemblance between him and the figure in the Polaroid emerged through digital aging. The focus shifted to the basement, where ground-penetrating radar detected anomalies beneath the concrete floor, hinting at hidden secrets. Breaking through the surface, a putrid odor greeted the investigators. Beneath layers of concrete and earth, they uncovered the remains of each missing family, perfectly preserved in the cool, dry soil. Among their possessions lay a camera, identical to the one capturing the chilling images found in the attic. The house was cordoned off as a crime scene, sealing Rebecca's fate of never returning. As evidence accumulated, a hidden crawlspace in the attic was unveiled behind a concealed wall. Inside lay a small cot, photography equipment, and a journal filled with meticulous observations of the families who had resided there. The latest entry, dated a mere 3 days prior, read, "The new arrival is different. She discovered my photo too soon. I must hasten my plans." Seeking safety, Rebecca relocated to a hotel under police protection. One restless night, a mysterious call shattered the silence, jolting Rebecca from her sleep. Answering, she was met with only the sound of breathing, followed by the mechanical click of a Polaroid camera capturing an unseen image. The investigation lingered, the house standing empty, its windows dark, concealing untold secrets. The enigma of Samuel Whitfield persisted, his fate uncertain whether he perished long ago or vanished into a new identity, a new abode, a new realm of shadows. In a dimly lit room, photographs developed, capturing new families, new residences, new watchers concealed in the darkness. Those who sought the truth about the man in the photograph found themselves under a chilling gaze, forever haunted by the specter of the unseen watcher. Story 24. In a quaint suburban home, Rebecca Morgan found herself reluctantly venturing into the attic one stormy night. A leak in the roof demanded her attention, leading her to a place she had always avoided. The attic was a realm of forgotten treasures, shrouded in layers of dust and cobwebs. Among the relics of the past, her eyes fell upon an old dollhouse tucked away in a shadowy corner. It exuded an eerie charm, with its tiny furniture arranged meticulously, as if frozen in time. But as Rebecca gazed into the miniature rooms, a sense of unease crept over her. The figures within were not dolls, but intricately carved replicas of her own family, each one a haunting likeness of reality. Every detail was painstakingly accurate, mirroring her family members' features and postures with unsettling precision. Yet there was a glaring anomaly. The figure meant to represent Rebecca herself stood near the attic door, a deviation from the familiar arrangement downstairs. Running her finger over the dollhouse roof, Rebecca felt the imprint where her miniature likeness stood. A shiver ran down her spine, unrelated to the chill in the air whispering through the attic. This dollhouse shouldn't have existed in this place. It wasn't from her childhood home, but a temporary abode her family had recently occupied. Disturbed and perplexed, Rebecca's discovery set off a chain of events that would unravel a tale of obscurity and intrusion. The initial alarm was raised when Rebecca urgently contacted the authorities, her voice fraught with anxiety. Law enforcement soon arrived at the residence to find a family in distress, huddled together in the living room, reluctant to ascend the stairs to the attic. Detective Sarah Harmon, the lead investigator, initially brushed off the family's concerns as a prank or a product of their overactive imaginations. However, the meticulous craftsmanship of the dollhouse figures caught her attention, each one capturing a distinct trait of the family members: a father's receding hairline, a son's hoodie, a mother's small birthmark. These intricate details hinted at a deeper, more sinister purpose behind the seemingly innocent dollhouse. Forensic analysis uncovered fingerprints on the dollhouse that did not match any family member, raising more questions than answers. Further examination revealed microscopic cameras embedded in the eyes of each miniature figure, connected to a sophisticated surveillance system concealed beneath the dollhouse. The footage captured the Morgan family's daily routines with unsettling accuracy, depicting not just a single evening, but a prolonged period of observation. It became evident that the intruder had studied the family's habits in intricate detail, replicating their movements within the dollhouse. The investigation took a chilling turn when a hidden entrance to the basement was discovered behind a false wall in the pantry. Inside, investigators found evidence of a clandestine living space, indicating that someone had been residing beneath the unsuspecting family for weeks. What baffled the authorities was the absence of forced entry, as records showed the house had been vacant for a considerable period before the Morgans' arrival. Delving into the property's history revealed a somber tale of an elderly couple who had passed away, leaving their son, Martin Wells, to manage the estate. Through digital forensics, the surveillance system's data trail led investigators to Martin's apartment across town. Inside, a haunting sight awaited them: walls adorned with photographs of the Morgan family and other previous occupants, alongside detailed journal entries chronicling their daily lives. The apartment housed a workshop filled with unfinished dollhouses, each one representing a different home in the vicinity. Martin Wells, the orchestrator of this intricate web of surveillance, had spiraled into a realm of possessive delusion, using the dollhouses to exert control over the properties and their inhabitants. During interrogation, Martin remained eerily composed, revealing his twisted motivation stemmed from a need to maintain dominance over the homes he felt belonged to him. His fixation on the Morgan family and others stemmed from a deep-rooted psychological disturbance, blurring the lines between reality and obsession. The dollhouse, far from being a mere plaything, symbolized his warped sense of ownership and control. As the legal proceedings unfolded, Martin Wells faced multiple charges related to stalking, invasion of privacy, and illegal surveillance. The court recognized the profound violation the Morgan family had endured, emphasizing the breach of their privacy and security. The case prompted a reassessment of real estate disclosure laws, highlighting the need for stringent measures to protect tenants from such clandestine intrusions. The unsettling nature of Martin's actions reverberated through the community, raising questions about the boundaries between surveillance and intrusion. The Morgans, scarred by the ordeal, chose to relocate, seeking solace far from the echoes of their past trauma. Yet the shadow of Martin's voyeurism lingered, casting a pall over their newfound sanctuary. Rebecca, haunted by the realization that they had been unwitting pawns in a twisted game of control, spoke of lingering unease that clung to her like a specter. The specter of being watched, of being reduced to mere figurines in a macabre diorama orchestrated by a disturbed mind. The journey toward healing was fraught with challenges, as the scars of violation ran deep, echoing through the corridors of their new abode. In the aftermath of the case, criminologists pondered the extent of Martin's clandestine activities, speculating on the lives he had ensnared in his web of surveillance. The tale of the dollhouse dwelled in the realm of the inexplicable, a chilling reminder of how the familiar can morph into something sinister under the cloak of darkness. And as Rebecca gazed into the night, her thoughts strayed to unseen corners, where shadows whispered of secrets long buried and echoes of a past that still haunted her dreams. Story 25. The inn stood unassuming, a relic of a bygone era where travelers sought respite for a fleeting night. With a worn key in hand, the clerk's gaze held a hint of mystery as he uttered in a hushed tone, "Avoid the final door on the left." Intrigue sparked within her, compelling her to wander down the shadowed corridor later that evening. Pausing before the nondescript door, she felt the chilling touch of the handle. It appeared no different from its companions until she pressed her ear against its surface. A soft breath whispered from the other side, a hint of hidden secrets. Detective Morgan Reed found herself roused from sleep, entering the room shrouded by yellow tape, a scene overflowing with a pungent metallic aroma she knew too well. Blood had tainted the carpet, a stark contrast to the untouched surroundings. Amidst the pristine bathroom and undisturbed bed, a young woman's lifeless form lay sprawled, her eyes fixed on the ceiling in a frozen gaze of disbelief. Reed knelt beside her, mindful of the evidence markers that punctuated the space. The forensic technician's voice lingered flatly as he documented the grim scene, noting the familiar signature of the crime. 3 similar deaths haunted this season, a pattern veiled in mystery. The victim's upscale attire clashed with the seedy motel her handbag left undisturbed. This was no mere act of robbery. A deeper motive lurked within the shadows. As the investigation unfolded, Reed pieced together a puzzle of unsuspecting victims, each found in obscure motels. Autopsy findings revealed a personal touch in the killings, devoid of the usual predatory nature. Days blurred into nights as lights ran cold, until a glimmer of hope emerged from a sister's trembling confession of a clandestine affair with a mysterious man known only as C. Delving into the victim's workplace led Reed to Charles Emerson, a high-ranking executive with a facade of normalcy. His alibi wavered under scrutiny, his eyes betraying a hidden truth. Forensic evidence linked him to the crime, unraveling a sinister web of deceit and obsession. Emerson's meticulously crafted world crumbled under the weight of undeniable proof, a twisted game of manipulation and violence laid bare. The courtroom bore witness to his downfall, his stoic demeanor masking a void where empathy should have resided. The media dubbed it the door on the left case, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurks behind closed doors. Yet for Reed, closure remained elusive. In the quiet of hotel corridors, she found herself haunted by the echoes of past tragedies, pondering the enigmatic stories hidden behind each door. Locked away in the evidence vault, 3 keys stand as solemn reminders of lives lost to a malevolent force, a somber testament to the irrevocable consequences of unlocking forbidden truths. Story 26. In the stillness of the night, a faint flicker danced across the baby monitor screen like a secret message from the shadows. The mother, half dreaming, brushed it off as a glitch, a mere blip in the electronic chatter of the night. But then the air crackled with a whispered command, "SHHH, go back to sleep." A chill ran down her spine, awakening her senses to a world tinged with mystery. Heart pounding, she hurried to her son's room, the silence heavy around her. Yet as she reached the crib, her fears materialized empty, cold, devoid of the warmth that should have been there. The room was a sanctuary of stillness, untouched by chaos, the window shut tight, the door a barrier against the unknown. Only the stuffed rabbit lay discarded on the floor, its button eyes staring up at her with an unblinking gaze that seemed to hold secrets untold. Panic seized her, a primal scream tearing through the night until her voice was but a raw whisper of despair. The neighbors, roused by her anguished cries, called for help, summoning the forces of light to pierce the darkness. When the authorities arrived, they found her cradling the stuffed rabbit, lost in a world where reality and nightmare intertwined. Samuel, her precious infant of only 4 months, had vanished into the night, leaving behind a void that echoed with unanswered questions. The investigation unfolded like a tapestry of shadows and whispers, each thread leading deeper into the labyrinth of the unknown. No signs of forced entry, no trace of a struggle, just the enigma of a child plucked from his slumber, a life disrupted by unseen hands. Rebecca, the grieving mother, found herself cast under suspicion's harsh light. Her past struggles with postpartum depression painted a portrait of fragility, of a soul teetering on the edge of darkness. Whispers lingered in the air, casting doubt upon her innocence, weaving a web of speculation that threatened to ensnare her fragile heart. But then a glimmer of hope, a sliver of evidence that shattered the darkness. Microscopic fibers, alien to the sanctuary of the nursery, hinted at a trespasser's silent ascent through the night. A shadow caught in the act, a footprint etched in the soil, a puzzle taking shape in the hands of dedicated sleuths. The focus shifted, the spotlight turning towards a figure from the shadows, Daniel, the absent husband whose return heralded a storm of revelations. His hands bore the marks of a climber, his secrets buried beneath a facade of grief and betrayal. A second family, a web of lies spun across communities, a tale of deceit that echoed through the halls of justice. The baby monitor, once a harbinger of whispers, now stood as a beacon of truth in a sea of lies. Its digital eyes unveiled a scheme of darkness, a plot woven from loss and longing. The voice that had haunted Rebecca's dreams was but a pawn in a game of twisted desires. And in the depths of a residential basement, a scene unfolded that defied reason. A woman named Elaine, a specter from the past, cradling Samuel in her arms, her eyes vacant, her heart consumed by a grief that knew no bounds. The pieces fell into place, a mosaic of betrayal and despair, as the past collided with the present in a symphony of broken dreams. The trial, a stage set for justice's hand to wield its blade, bore witness to the echoes of that fateful night. Daniel's cough, a signature of guilt, reverberated through the courtroom, sealing his fate in the annals of infamy. Elaine, a ghost of love lost, stood silent, her eyes a window to a soul stained by darkness. As the gavel fell, the world breathed a sigh of relief, a moment of closure in a tale woven from shadows. Rebecca, her heart scarred but unbowed, gathered the remnants of her shattered world, Samuel cradled in her arms like a beacon of hope in a sea of despair. And so the night of whispers faded into memory, a tale of darkness and light, of loss and redemption. The stuffed rabbit, a silent witness to the truth that lay hidden in the shadows, remained a reminder of a night when the world trembled on the brink of the unknown. The baby monitor, a guardian of secrets, whispered its silent vigil to the stars, a lullaby of mysteries that danced on the edge of dreams. Story 27. The old apartment exuded a sense of history, its walls holding countless untold stories within their weathered embrace. The heating system groaned and the pipes rattled with a familiarity that echoed through the years. It was a symphony of the past, a lullaby of forgotten days. She, the occupant of this aged abode, found solace in these sounds, finding comfort in the routine disruptions of the building settling around her. Yet one fateful night, as she lay in the stillness of her room, a whisper, almost imperceptible, danced through the vents like a ghostly waltz. It was not a mere echo of mundane conversations or distant television noises. It was a beckoning, a calling that stirred the shadows of her solitude. Her heart quickened as she pressed her ear against the cold metal grate, straining to catch the words carried on the breath of the night. "I know you can hear me," the voice teased, a soft caress against the silence, sending shivers down her spine. Detective Morgan Shaw, a guardian of mysteries, found herself drawn to the vacant apartment where the whispers had originated. The scene before her was frozen in time, a tableau of eerie stillness that whispered of secrets long kept hidden. The forensics team moved with precision, capturing the essence of the room in flashes of light. The victim, Elena Reeves, a bright soul now lost to the shadows, had left behind a trail of unanswered questions and haunting whispers. Officer Patel recited the details from his notepad, each word a brushstroke in the painting of the unknown. Shaw knelt by the rusted vent, tracing the frantic marks etched into the metal with a sense of foreboding. The signs were clear. This was no ordinary disappearance. Eleanor's world had become a tapestry of fear, woven with threads of paranoia and unseen terrors that lurked within the walls. The whispers of the past echoed in Shaw's mind as she pieced together Eleanor's final days. The teacher, beloved by all, had succumbed to a darkness that whispered her name in the dead of night. The apartment held its secrets close, revealing glimpses of a reality twisted by unseen hands. The investigation unfolded like a macabre dance, each step leading deeper into the heart of darkness that had claimed Eleanor. The threads of the past intertwined with the present, painting a portrait of a predator lurking in the shadows, a phantom of the walls. As Shaw delved into the depths of the case, a chilling truth emerged. A man named Harold Weber, the silent watcher within the walls, a puppeteer of whispers and shadows. His calm facade crumbled under Shaw's scrutiny, revealing a darkness that had long dwelled within him. The evidence spoke volumes, each piece a testament to Weber's twisted obsession with those who had crossed his path. The recordings, the artifacts, the hidden passages all led to a chilling revelation of a mind consumed by the whispers of the building. Weber's facade shattered like glass as the truth emerged, his serene demeanor a mask for the darkness that lurked within. The whispers that had guided his hand now turned against him, sealing his fate in the eyes of justice. The echoes of the past lingered in the empty apartment, a haunting reminder of the horrors that had unfolded within its walls. The whispers still danced in the shadows, a spectral symphony that played on in the silence of the night. The building stood as a silent sentinel, bearing witness to the secrets that had stained its walls. Residents came and went, their footsteps echoing in the halls like whispers of the past. The whispers in the walls remained, a ghostly chorus that sang of a darkness never truly banished. And so the old apartment stood as a monument to the mysteries that dwelled within its walls, a testament to the power of whispers that lingered in the stillness of the night. The building remembered, the whispers endured, and the shadows danced on in eternal silence.